Chapter 31:24. We're not casual people, too. With this thought in mind, the young family's old ancestor continued to provoke him. Are there any other families who want to go with them? When the families who didn't agree heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't help but curse in their hearts. The young family old fart was actually trying to provoke them. If they didn't agree, after they left the young family, their family's reputation as a timid mouse would probably resound throughout the ancient martial arts world. But if they agreed, they were not too willing, and more importantly, they were not confident. This matter made them panic for no reason. They felt that if they agreed because of the old man's goading, something might happen. But if he didn't agree, he would be looked down upon. This fact made them feel very conflicted. Looking at their expressions, the young family's ancestor didn't need to guess to know what they were thinking. But if they didn't agree, the three little babies wouldn't be able to enjoy themselves. After thinking about it, he decided to increase the bet. 200 years. If my family's 3 children lose, our young family will be at your beck and call for the next 200 years. How about it? The young family's old ancestor deliberately put on an appearance of determination. 200 years? Everyone could not help but look at each other. Was this old man crazy? He actually made such a big bet for 3 little children? It had to be said that the young family's ancestors' actions were rather suspicious. Everyone secretly guessed, was old man Yang really crazy? Or did these 3 little children really have that kind of strength? It would be fine if they really went crazy, since they were the ones who would benefit, but what if? The crowd didn't dare to think further and turned their eyes to the 3 on the stage. On the stage, Rui Jin was gnawing on a fruit as usual, and the other 2 babies had actually gotten 2 teddy bears out of nowhere and were playing with them as if there was no one else around. Looking at the 3 babies who had obviously just been weaned, they could not imagine that the old man of the Yang family would actually bet such a big bet on them. It seemed that the old man was really crazy. After coming to such a conclusion, everyone was still quite cautious and did not immediately agree to the old man's proposal. After all, this was a big matter that concerned the ownership of the family for 200 years. Just as the ancestors were seriously thinking, the Yang family's ancestor stretched out his 5 fingers and said, 500 years. If you join hands and win against my 3 children, our Yang family will listen to you for 500 years, and vice versa. How about it? Do you dare to bet with me? You cowards! Another 500 years? This time, all the ancestors were completely sure that old man Yang had gone crazy, and it was not light. In fact, when the Yang family's old ancestor said this, he wasn't particularly confident, but as long as he thought of the abnormal parents of the 3, his confidence rose again. In any case, let those 3 cute little children have their fun first. If it's done well, their Yang family can have a few more subsidiary families in 500 years. This is simply a win-win situation. It could be said that the Yang family's ancestor had thought very far ahead. After all, no matter how much he liked the 3 children, he couldn't ignore the Yang family's future. However, he also believed that as long as he made the 3 children happy, their parents would definitely not mistreat their Yang family. The Yang family's old ancestors' thoughts were quite beautiful, but unfortunately, the more he acted this way, the more the other family's old ancestors didn't dare to make a decision easily. 500 years. The old man from the Yang family had gone crazy, but they had not followed suit. Therefore, even if the bet was very tempting, they had to be careful. This time, even the Li family's elder had to be careful. He had no choice, he was afraid of being deceived. However, the Li family's old ancestor was also afraid that old man Yang's mouth would spout nonsense, so he thought for a moment before saying, "Old man Yang, 500 years is not a short time. You have to give us some time to think about this. You still want to think about such a good opportunity? Old man Li, are you backing out too? Don't forget, you were the one who started it. If you back off now, he'll look down on you." The Yang family's old ancestor said disdainfully. His words made Elder Li choke quite a bit. Old man Li's face was red as he said weakly, "If you said 100 years, I'd bet with you right away. But 500 years, that's too long. Of course we have to think about it, don't you think so?" "Yep, that's right. It's really been too long." When the others heard this, they quickly echoed. The Yang family's old ancestor's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he continued to speak in disdain. I knew you wouldn't have the guts. If that's the case, don't provoke me. You're the one who's provoking me, aren't you? Everyone couldn't help but secretly complain. However, the feeling of being looked down on was really not good. After thinking about it, someone suggested, Old Man Yang, can you give us some time to discuss this? After all, the stakes are too high. Even if we are the ancestors of each family, we can't make a decision easily, don't you think so? That's true. However, how long do you want to discuss? You should at least give me some time, right? Also, how are we going to proceed with the competition? Are we still going to compete? You guys have to give us an explanation. The Yang family's old ancestor said, We definitely have to compete. Someone said, Compete now? Then you guys should go and discuss it. The Yang family's old ancestor said impatiently, Why are you so anxious? Waiting to have a child. The Li family's elder said speechlessly. He wanted them to discuss it, but they were in such a hurry. What was this? I'm not in a hurry, but my child is. Can't you see that they're all getting impatient from waiting in the ring? Whether we can finish discussing today, whether we can still compete, you guys have to give me a definite answer. The Yang family ancestor said, Give us 2 days. We'll stop the war for now. After thinking for a while, the Li clan's elder was forced to say helplessly. He knew that the 3 of them had been waiting for a fight for a few days, and now, they didn't fight again today. However, he still had to say it. Bracing himself, the Yang family's old ancestor personally went to the arena. My 3 little babies, long time no see. The Yang family's old ancestor said with a smile. Rui Xian did not even raise his head. Rui gave him face, he looked up at him and then lowered his head to play again. As the big brother, Rui Sheng often acted as the spokesperson for his 2 younger brothers, so he nodded his head generously and asked with his eyes, What's the matter? That, today's elite competition has been suspended. The Yang family's old ancestor, who understood what Saint Rui meant, said directly. And then, Saint Rui asked, We'll start again in 2 days. Those cowardly families want to discuss whether they want to fight with you as a group. So, let's give them 2 days to think about it, okay? It's to prevent them from feeling unbalanced after losing, don't you think so? The Yang family's old ancestor said in a negotiating tone. Rui Xing nodded his head in understanding. In fact, they had heard the conversation between the old man and the other old men just now, otherwise they would not have been so honest and not interrupted. Now, although it would be 2 days later, but since the old man was thinking about the 3 of them, he would not hold it against him. When the Yang family's ancestor saw Saint Rui nod his head, he was very pleased. Look, what an obedient child. Unfortunately, it wasn't their Yang family's. Why didn't the Yang family have such an obedient and cute little child? For a time, the Yang family's old ancestor couldn't help but sigh. After sighing, he and the little handsome boy shamelessly followed the 3 of them down the stage and went to the residence of Leng Ruoxue and the others. When he saw Leng Ruoxue and her husband, old ancestor Yang became bashful for once. After a long time, he carefully told them about the delay of the elite competition. Even though Leng Ruoxue wasn't present at the competition, she had been paying attention to everything. She only nodded her head and didn't say much. Seeing Leng Ruoxue in this state, old ancestor Yang's heart was in a mess. He was a little scared. Of course, he was mainly afraid that Leng Ruoxue would blame him for using his own son to make a bet. However, he couldn't be blamed for this. In that situation, he could only brace himself and rush forward. Fortunately, Leng Ruoxue didn't say much. She only exchanged pleasantries with old Master Yang before pulling the demon back to her room. She knew that this old man was here for her son. With them here, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. As soon as Leng Ruoxue and her husband left, old ancestor Yang finally relaxed. He heaved a huge sigh of relief and pulled the 3 of them into his arms. The 3 of them struggled a little but didn't manage to break free. Following that, they saw Regine gnawing on a fruit while saying in a slightly dissatisfied tone, Old man, you're taking advantage of us 3 brothers again. Little ancestor, don't you spout nonsense. I'm not taking advantage of you, I'm just cherishing you. The Yang family's ancestor was so scared that his face turned pale and he quickly explained. He even looked around, afraid that these words would be heard by the three's family. If they misunderstood, how wronged would he be? But fortunately, there was no one else besides the Yang family's little handsome boy and Yang Song, so the Yang family's ancestor was immediately relieved. I see. Then, if you want to cherish us, have you asked for our permission? We're not casual people, we can't let everyone want it. After thinking for a while, Saint Ray laughed evilly. The Yang family's old ancestor was somewhat speechless. Why was this child's words so infuriating? But on the account that your family has provided us with food and accommodation, we three brothers will reluctantly let you have it. After seeing the constipated look on the Yang family ancestor's face, Saint Rui changed the topic and continued. This feeling of going from hell to heaven made the Yang family's old ancestor a little uncomfortable for a while. Wasn't this happiness too sudden? The Yang family's old ancestor felt as if he had been acknowledged by the three of them, which made him feel very touched, even his eyes were a little wet. Then he heard him slightly choked with emotion. You guys are really good kids. Chapter 31:25, A Toad Lusting After a Swan. 1. Were they obedient? Saint Rui did not dare to agree with this. In fact, he sometimes felt that the three brothers were quite well behaved, but sometimes they were not well behaved at all, hee. However, looking at the old man's sincere face, Rui Sheng felt that they should be good children for the time being. With such a plan, the Yang family's old ancestor was touched, and after he finished speaking, Rui Sheng, Rui Zi and Rui Yen showed a shy expression. The pink and tender little person looked particularly attractive, which made the old man of the Yang family like it even more. The old man from the Yang family couldn't get enough of it. It wasn't until late at night that he returned to his own residence from the villa where the three of them lived. Early the next morning, when Leng Ruoxue and the rest were preparing to have breakfast, the old ancestor of the Yang family brought the little handsome boy to report. Leng Ruoxue felt a deep sense of helplessness as she looked at the embarrassed grandfather-grandson duo who had already decided to sit down and have breakfast with them. Had these two been charmed by their son? Leng Ruoxue had never expected that her son's charm would be so boundless that even this old man and young man would fall head over heels for him. Of course, this was enough to show that her son was too likable. Looking at her three adorable sons at the dining table, Leng Ruoxue ladled out a bowl of plain porridge for them and let them eat. As for the others, especially her grandfather and brother, Leng Ruoxue deeply felt that these two would not be in the mood to eat. It was no wonder. How could they be happy when their own grandson and nephew were being targeted by others? As a matter of fact, her grandfather and brother had already started to release cold air from the inside out, and were planning to use their eyes to dismember each other. Unfortunately, the Yang family grandfather and grandson pretended not to see it. On the other hand, Yang Shan, who had been hanging out with them, was pale and a little uncomfortable. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue's interest was piqued. Since when did this grandfather-grandson pair become so bold? He remembered that the first time he met them, these two people didn't have such big guts. Leng Ruoxue was very curious, so she asked Qing Ju in her heart. However, other than smiling, Qing Ju was not willing to say anything. This made her feel a little depressed. Did something happen that she did not know about? In fact, nothing had happened, but the Yang family grandfather and grandson felt that as long as they didn't challenge the other party's bottom line, the other party would definitely not kill the innocent. It was because of this thought that the two of them had no fear. Leng Ruoxue herself was not a bloodthirsty person, so she really couldn't do anything about their sticky attitude. Furthermore, the result of this was that many people came to their villa for no reason, and most of them were young women. Looking at the courtyard full of gorgeously dressed beauties, Leng Ruoxue was slightly flustered. Without asking, she could already guess the purpose of these women. She glared at the Yang family's old ancestor in a bad mood. Out of sight, out of mind. Leng Ruoxue turned around and walked away. The moment Leng Ruoxue left, the evildoer's body emitted a cold aura. Even though not all of these women were here for him, they had made his wife unhappy, so they deserved to die. However, it was more important to catch up with his wife's pace now. The rest could be discussed later. With this thought in mind, the evildoer also left the courtyard. However, before he left, his deep and cold eyes made the young family ancestor and the little handsome boy's scalps go numb. Sob, sob, sob. This had nothing to do with them. They didn't ask him to come. The young family's ancestor and the little handsome boy felt particularly aggrieved, while the three of them looked at the two of them calmly and sympathetically. Their clear eyes seemed to be saying, "You two are dead for making our mother unhappy." Looking at the three of them gloating over their misfortune, the young family's ancestor and the little handsome boy wanted to die. At this moment, the two of them had never hated the young family's women as much as they did now. Weren't they just looking for trouble? There are some people that you can target? Furthermore, the moment the devilish man left, the young family's women's gazes were all focused on Lung Ruhan. In the eyes of the women, Lung Ruhan was not as devilish as a certain man, but he was like a fairy. At first glance, he was definitely not a dragon among men. Unfortunately, Lung Ruhan was unromantic and always had a straight face. The cold air around him was so strong that it could freeze people to death. However, this did not stop the women from trying to court him. Lung Ruhan was about to go crazy from being pestered. Finally, he could not take it anymore and shouted at the old ancestor of the Yang family, "Hurry up and get rid of this group of unwanted women from your Yang family, or you'll have to bear the consequences." A woman that no one wanted? When the girls heard this, they were instantly unhappy. The Yang family's status in the ancient martial arts world wasn't low, so the status of the Yang family's women naturally rose with the tide. Therefore, most of the time, they were quite confident and proud. But now, the person they admired had actually said that she was a woman that no one wanted. Which woman would be happy to do this? A young and beautiful woman immediately protested, "We're not women that no one wants. We have noble status. I don't know how many young talents want to marry us." "That's right, that's right." All the girls echoed in unison. When the Yang family's old ancestor and the little handsome boy heard this, they simply couldn't show their faces. Who gave them such confidence? More importantly, don't you know who you're talking to? Although the women in front of him were the descendants of the Yang family's ancestor, to be honest, at this moment, he really couldn't sympathize with them. These women had eyes but couldn't see. When would they grow some brains and know what to say and what not to say? There are some people that you can't dream of. But obviously, these women didn't know who the person in front of them was. They only felt that with their status as young ladies of the Yang family, they were more than enough to match the man in front of them. In addition, the disdainful words of the man in front of them also made the women of the Yang family, who had always been proud and arrogant, feel very uncomfortable. However, before they could express their dissatisfaction, they heard the clear voice of Saint Brun. "Since you guys are so popular, why are you drooling at my uncle? It's too strange." "Yes, that's right. My uncle would never marry a woman like that. Otherwise, we three brothers would definitely not let that woman enter our house." Ruzi also followed. Although Ruijin was only focused on eating and did not respond, the expression on his pretty little face was obviously the same. After he finished eating the fruit in his hand, he opened his mouth and said, "A toad shouldn't dream of eating swan meat, you won't be able to eat it." Puchi. Hearing Ruiju's childish words, Lung Ruhan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, the little handsome boy laughed wildly as well. Needless to say, the little handsome boy knew that the toads Ruiju was referring to were definitely not his uncle. However, to hear someone say that the young ladies of the Yang family were toads was already a miracle. Chapter 31:26, A Toad Lusting After a Swan. 2. One had to know that the women of the Yang family had been pampered since they were young because of their beauty. Now that they were suddenly ignored like this, little handsome Yang really felt that his hatred had been vented. He had never liked the Yang sisters. Now that he saw them embarrass themselves, how could he not gloat? However, he only laughed for a short while before he received the furious gaze of his ancestor. Immediately, he did not dare to laugh wildly. However, his heaving chest proved that he was having a hard time holding back his laughter. With just one look from the ancestor, he understood his mistake. Although he didn't like women like the Yang family who had strong motives, now was not the time to fight among themselves. Of course, it was impossible for him to unite against the outside world, because he knew very well that the ancestor would not dare to blame the 3 cute babies. More importantly, what she said was right. The Yang family's daughter was indeed a toad lusting after swan meat. He believed that his ancestor also understood this, so although his ancestor was very angry, he could not refute it. However, handsome Yang believed that his ancestor would definitely vent his anger on these women who didn't know what they were talking about. Of course, this might also include him. At this moment, the handsome little boy felt a sense of danger. He was really too proud. He actually forgot that he couldn't escape from the embarrassment of the Yang family, because his surname was also Yang. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, handsome Yang immediately pretended to be an obedient child. He only hoped that the old ancestor would forget his wild laughter just now. He really didn't do it on purpose. At this time, the girls also realized that the toads that the little boy was referring to were actually them, and they were instantly enraged. One of the girls even pointed at Ruijin and shouted, "Whose damned child is this? How can he be so rude? What did your mother teach you? You're really a bastard who has no parents to teach you." As soon as she said this, the Yang family's old ancestor and the little handsome boy suddenly felt that things would go wrong. Wasn't this courting death? And I'm sure hell die. Who are you calling a bastard who has a father but no mother? As expected, Lung Ruhan was infuriated when she heard this. She questioned him in a cold and sinister tone. "Of course, it's these 3 little bastards in front of me." The woman shouted. "You shut up." Seeing that the situation was about to turn for the worse, the Yang family's old ancestor did not wait for Lung Ruhan to speak again and shouted angrily. "Let her speak." Lung Ruhan's eyes narrowed as she spoke to the Yang family's ancestor in an unusually cold voice. The Yang family's old ancestor suddenly felt a chill from the inside out, and his little heart couldn't help but tremble. He knew that the man in front of him was really angry, and this matter was not something he could stop. At this time, the little handsome man also quietly pulled his ancestor's sleeve, indicating that he should not provoke the other party. The Yang family's ancestor understood and could only shut his mouth. He turned his eyes to the 3. He knew that if he wanted to solve this matter, it would depend on the attitude of the 3. Unfortunately, the 3 of them did not seem to see his cry for help, and only looked at their uncle pitifully. Ruijin was even more confused and asked, "What's a bastard? A seed that grows in the wild? Don't listen to that woman's nonsense. Let uncle handle it." Lung Ruhan quickly said. But this time, Ruiqiao didn't even give face to his uncle. The stubborn him just wanted to understand what a bastard child was. It was obvious that the other party was talking about the 3 of them. "What's a bastard?" Turning his gaze to the woman, Ruijin asked seriously. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruhan felt a headache coming on. This child rarely expressed his opinions, so why was he so insistent this time? Illegitimate children are illegitimate children like you. Seeing Ruiju ask her, the woman smiled smugly. "You're talking nonsense. We're not illegitimate children. We have a father and a mother. How can we be illegitimate children?" Ruijin said angrily. He had seen the term illegitimate child on the internet, and it had nothing to do with them at all, and they were definitely not. So what? As a member of the Yang family, your mother married without informing the family and gave birth to the 3 of you. This is not allowed in itself. Our Yang family does not recognize their marriage, so you are illegitimate children. By the way, I'll tell you some news. Our Yang family's big sister Bing is going to marry your father and become your mother. If you know what's good for you, be good, and big sister Bing will be happy and give you some food to eat. If you don't, then just wait to be kicked out of the house. The more the woman spoke, the prouder she became. She couldn't help but reveal such a secret. After hearing her words, the Yang family's ancestor and the little handsome boy were so scared that their little faces turned pale. Damn it, when did this happen? How come they didn't know about it? Wasn't this courting death? Obviously feeling that the cold air around them was getting stronger and stronger, the 2 were so scared that they didn't dare to raise their heads. The Yang family's ancestor was even cursing some Yang family members who were looking for trouble in his heart. At the same time, the two of them heard a cold voice that seemed to come from afar. "Oh really? I didn't think that the Yang family would have such a plan. Should I be tactful and give up my seat to your big sister Bing? It's naturally good that you're so tactful." The woman did not notice the sinister cold chi in Lung Ruox's words. Instead, she spoke in a self-righteous manner. "You must be tactful. Old man Yang, don't you agree?" Lung Ruoxue said to the Yang family's old ancestor with a hint of ridicule. When the Yang family's old ancestor heard this, he only felt the chill all over his body become even more intense. Unable to stop his body from trembling, the Yang family's old ancestor stammered with an awkward expression. This must be a misunderstanding. Although I don't know how such a misunderstanding could have happened, please believe me, I will definitely give you an explanation." "Explanation? Do I need an explanation from your Yang family?" Lung Ruoxue laughed. "No matter what, this is the Yang family's fault." The Yang family's old ancestor thought about it again and said carefully, "So as long as I can destroy the Yang family, I will be able to dispel the anger in my heart, don't you think so?" Lung Ruoxue asked indifferently. "Nogus." The Yang family's old ancestor wanted to cry to death. How could the other party be so violent? He was going to destroy the Yang family? Sob, sob, sob. Don't be like this. Kiss. Leave the Yang family a way out. The Yang family's old ancestor, who was pleading in his heart, was prepared to beg Lung Ruoxue properly. Who knew that the other party would not say anything. He knew that he had gone too far this time. If the other party was willing to pay attention to him, he would have shamelessly pestered the other party to let them go. But now, the other party was ignoring him. Who could he go to beg? Wait, 3 more? Turning his pitiful eyes to the 3 of them, the old ancestor of the Yang family was just about to speak when he heard Saint Ray say, "Mom, you can deal with the Yang family after we're done beating them up." "All right," he said. Lung Ruoxue agreed. At this moment, the Yang family's old ancestor wanted to just kill himself. The little darling actually said the same thing. "Woo, how is he going to live?" Saint Rui's baby. After calming himself down, the ancestor of the Yang family looked at Saint Rui with tears in his eyes. Everything was clear without words. "Don't look at me like that, I have no choice. We're just illegitimate children, we can't interfere with your adult business." Saint Rui spread out his hands and said with a helpless expression. Rui Jin pulled his big brother, scowling. "Brother, what are we going to do in the future? We're going to be kicked out of the house." "It's fine. Let's not talk about whether that mistress can get promoted, but I'm sure she won't live past next year." Rui Sheng comforted his poor brother who was obviously a little shocked. "Yes, that's true." Rui Jin nodded his head, no longer feeling sad. However, the conversation between the two of them had provoked the woman who had exposed the news. She shouted angrily, "Who are you saying can't live past next year? 2 little bastards. Are you guys looking for death? You shut up." When he heard this, the Yang family's old ancestor didn't even need to refute it. He already shouted at the top of his voice. He was really worried. Although women could be used for marriage, when there were more women in the family, there would be more things to do. Now, he really felt it for himself. As for how to deal with these matters, he couldn't think of a good solution for the time being. He only felt that his head was a mess. As for the woman who had been yelled at by the old ancestor, she felt extremely wronged at this time. She felt that she had not done anything. She had only said a few words of truth. How could she have made the old ancestor angry? It had to be said that this woman's reaction was slow enough, but more than that, she felt good about herself. As a woman of the Yang family, she had a superior family background. Moreover, she was a direct descendant of the Yang family, so naturally, she didn't put the other Yang family members in her eyes. But now, the ancestor had embarrassed her in public for a branch family member. This kind of treatment made her feel deeply humiliated. However, the other party was the ancestor. Even if she was dissatisfied, she didn't dare to go against the ancestor. Thinking of this, the woman unwillingly closed her mouth. Seeing that the woman didn't dare to say anything, the young family's old ancestor put on a smile and once again looked at the three and begged, "My three little babies, I definitely didn't know about this. But don't worry, since I know about it now, I'll definitely give you a satisfactory explanation." The young family's old ancestor's mouth was promising, but his heart was infinitely worried. A group of worrying descendants. If he had known this would happen, he would have strangled them all to death. However, what made him even sadder was that the three little babies were actually ignoring him. Well, what should he do? The helpless young family's old ancestor could only leave with that group of troublesome women, full of grievances and looking back every few steps. After he left, the three of them sighed. After such an incident, they didn't know how to get along with the old man. In fact, they knew very well that the old man was a good person, but many of the people in the old man's family were not good people. Lung Ruhan, who was watching the three of them from the side, could not help but laugh when she saw their cute sighing expressions. It looked like the three little fellows were not affected by the group of women at all. He was relieved. It was just the young family, so he probably would not be able to sleep tonight. However, this was none of his business. In Lung Ruhan's heart, it was enough as long as her three adorable nephews were happy. He was completely asking for it and was not worthy of sympathy at all. Chapter 3127. My mother is very tactful. 1. The people on Lung Ruaksh's side basically didn't treat this as a big deal. They were just a few toads who wanted to eat swan meat. It wasn't a big deal. However, the young family's ancestor and the little handsome boy weren't so calm. They were very clear that the couple and the people around them were not ordinary people. They were not people their young family could afford to offend. If this matter was not handled well, the young family would probably be doomed. Originally, inviting these people to the young family as guests could be said to be something that the young family could not ask for more, but now, because of a few ignorant love-struck women, their young family might be faced with a disaster of extermination. How could the young family's ancestor feel good about this? His heart felt as heavy as if there was a big stone stuck in his chest, and the handsome young man who had been following him was so nervous that he didn't dare to make a sound. On the other hand, the girls who were unwilling to walk behind them all had dissatisfaction on their faces. They felt that their ancestor had embarrassed them in front of the collateral branch. This made them lose a lot of face. It could be said that they didn't have the slightest sense of crisis at the moment. After the young family's old ancestor returned to the young family's main residence, he immediately gathered the patriarch and the elders for an emergency meeting. The young family members who had been inexplicably called here were all puzzled by this, and the old ancestor sitting in the main seat without saying a word with a serious expression also gave them a bad feeling. What had happened? Which blind person had angered the old ancestor? The patriarch and the elders of the young family were a little uneasy, but the young family's ancestor did not speak for a long time, only his face was black and silent. This also made the young family's hearts begin to sink, and at the same time, they realized that the matter was probably very serious. After a long time, the young family's ancestor looked at the elders and said, "I heard that the young family is going to hold a wedding?" Old ancestor, what's the good news? How come I didn't know about it?" Elder Juan asked with a puzzled look on his face. If it was a love affair, it was impossible that he, the chief financial officer, had not received any news at all. Young Bing is getting married. The young family's old ancestor coldly said. Who are you marrying? Elder Juan was even more bewildered. Yang Bing had the highest status among the young family's young ladies, and was the family head's granddaughter. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to not have heard of such a big matter as her marriage, right? However, the truth was that he really didn't know. Elder Juan was puzzled and couldn't help but turn to look at the other elders. He saw that they were also in a state of confusion. It was obvious that they didn't know about this. Only the family head had an awkward expression on his face. It seemed like the family head knew. For a moment, all the elders' eyes were focused on the patriarch of the Yang family, waiting for him to answer. The patriarch of the Yang family had no choice but to cough a few times and say, "Old ancestor, this matter, you don't need to talk nonsense. I'm only asking you, is Yang Bing going to get married?" The Yang family's old ancestor interrupted the Yang family patriarch's words and asked, Bing did have that idea, but I haven't agreed to it yet. The patriarch of the Yang family said honestly. She had an idea? She really dared to think about it? Didn't she know who she was? Who was she to think about? A toad lusting after a swan's flesh? You don't know what death is. The Yang family's old ancestor said angrily. Old ancestor, Bing, isn't that bad, is she? Hearing the old ancestor's words, the Yang family head couldn't help retorting. It depends on who you're compared to, understand? The Yang family's old ancestor roared with a face full of disappointment. Old forefather, don't be angry first. I want to ask, who is Yang Bing going to marry? Elder Huan asked hurriedly when he saw the old ancestor's anger. You tell them. The Yang family's old ancestor turned his head and said to the little handsome boy beside him, Yes, ancestor. The handsome young man nodded his head in response, then turned to Elder Huan and the others. The person Yang Bing is going to marry is the father of the 3 little babies. Arg. It can't be? Elder Huan couldn't help but widen his eyes. He was obviously shocked. They knew who the 3 little babies were, and they knew even more clearly who their father was. He was the unparalleled master with unfathomable strength. Yang Lin said it herself, and even said that Yang Bing wanted to be the stepmothers of the 3 little babies. If the 3 of them were disobedient, she would kick them out of the house, and if they were obedient, she would reward them with a meal. Handsome Yang said without hiding anything. All the elders' expressions changed like a palette, and Elder Huan's reaction was the most intense. The 3 little treasures were his favorite, and Yang Bing actually dared to have such thoughts. He really didn't want to live anymore. Moreover, he dared to have ideas about her father. Did he think that her mother was easy to bully? Although the woman under the alias Yang Shui was so beautiful that one could not take their eyes off her, Elder Huan was clear that such a woman could not be a flower vase. Yang Xiong, have you eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall? You dare to have ideas about her? In his anger, Elder Huan was so angry that he directly called the family head's name. He was Jinqi, and this matter was not as simple as fighting for a woman and snatching a man. If it was not handled properly, the Yang family would no longer exist. I said I haven't agreed. The patriarch of the Yang family said with an aggrieved expression. You didn't agree? So you're considering it? You bastard. Even if you want to die, don't use our Yang family as a scapegoat. The more Elder Huan spoke, the angrier he became. He really wanted to rush forward and give Yang Xiong a few tight slaps to wake him up. What the hell was this? Is it that serious? The patriarch of the Yang family couldn't help but ask guiltily. Of course there is. You're just looking for death, you know that? Elder Huan said angrily. I'm just thinking for the family. Why don't you think about it? If Bing can really marry that man, it will be a great benefit to our Yang family. The patriarch of the Yang family reminded. What benefits? If you dare to have that kind of thought, I dare say that Bing will not live past the day she gets married. Elder Huan said furiously. How could this be? Don't tell me that Yang Shui would dare to kill Bing. The patriarch of the Yang family asked in surprise. Why wouldn't I? There's already someone who wants to snatch her man, and she's still letting her play mahjong. Elder Huan sneered for the master's whimsical thought. But, the patriarch of the Yang family choked and couldn't speak. Do you think that she's just a woman? As long as Mr. Yi agrees, she won't dare to have any objections? At this moment, the Yang family's old ancestor, who somewhat understood the Yang family head's thoughts, lightly said, I thought about it, but I haven't agreed to it yet. The patriarch of the Yang family said, feeling wronged. Do you really think that Madame Yi is an ordinary woman? The Yang family's old ancestor continued to ask, Aren't women just women? No matter how strong she was, she still had to listen to her husband. Besides, which powerhouse doesn't have a few women, so, the patriarch of the Yang family explained, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the old ancestor of the Yang family. Chapter 31:28. My mother is very sensible, too. So, you think it's not a bad idea to marry Bing to him, right? The Yang family's ancestor said. I've thought about it, but without the old ancestor's approval, how could I dare to agree? The patriarch of the Yang family quickly said. You really didn't agree? Then why did Yang Lin dare to say that? When the Yang family's old ancestor thought of this, he became a little angry. Ancestor, I swear, I really didn't agree. The patriarch of the Yang family said immediately. Forget it. It's no longer important whether you agree or not. The Yang family's old ancestor helplessly sighed. Ancestor, what about this matter? The patriarch of the Yang family asked for the opinion of the old ancestor. As long as the old ancestor agreed, this matter would be easy to handle. It could be said that the patriarch of the Yang family had a very beautiful dream. Of course, this had a lot to do with Yang Bing's brainwashing, so he couldn't help but have a beautiful dream. Don't think about this anymore. Let's think about how to deal with the aftermath. The Yang family's old ancestor looked deeply at the Yang family's patriarch and couldn't help but think in his heart, should he change the patriarch of the Yang family? This person was too full of himself. Sooner or later he would bring disaster to the Yang family. After what good? The patriarch of the Yang family didn't understand what the old ancestor meant. Do you even need to ask? Of course, it's about how to calm their anger. Elder Huan couldn't help but sneer as he replied on behalf of the ancestor. Why are they so angry? We didn't do anything, did we? The patriarch of the Yang family asked in a daze. You and your grandson are snatching her man, and you don't allow her to get angry? Elder Huan was helpless. Had the head of the family's intelligence been eaten by dogs these few days? Then we haven't robbed him yet, have we? The patriarch of the Yang family said weakly. They hadn't even put it into action yet. If I were them, you should die for having such thoughts. Elder Huan said honestly. Is it that serious? The patriarch of the Yang family was in disbelief. That Yang Shui was so jealous. Let me ask you, is this Yang Bing's idea, or your idea? Instead of directly answering Patriarch Yang's question, the Yang family's old ancestor asked back. It's Bing. She admires Mr. Yi a lot, so she wants to marry him. The patriarch of the Yang family said honestly. Did you tell her Mr. Yi's identity? The Yang family ancestor asked again. I didn't tell her. She overheard it by accident. The patriarch of the Yang family said carefully. No wonder. The old ancestor of the Yang family nodded. He had found it strange before that Yang Bing had always been rather proud, so why would he suddenly want to marry a married man? So it turned out that he had long known about the other party's identity. However, knowing his identity, he still dared to be delusional. It had to be said that Yang Bing's guts were really big. Ancestor, what do we do now? The patriarch of the Yang family, who didn't know what the old ancestor meant, asked in a daze. What can we do? In order to protect the Yang family, he could only hand Yang Bing over. I'm even afraid that they won't agree. The Yang family ancestor sighed. When the patriarch of the Yang family heard this, he panicked and hurriedly asked, Old ancestor, what do you mean by that? Why are you handing Binger over? But the other party was angry, do you understand? If we don't give them a satisfactory explanation, do you want to wait for them to exterminate our Yang family? The Yang family's old ancestor said angrily. Exterminate our Yang family? I know that the enemy is very strong, but we have so many experts, can they really destroy the Yang family? The patriarch of the Yang family said in disbelief. Yang Xiong, did you think that my previous warning was a joke? This time, the Yang family's old ancestor was even angrier. He continued, I'm not afraid to tell you that I once saw Mr. Yi tear space with my own eyes. Madam Yi is also a strong person. The strength of the two of them is not something that we, ancient martial arts practitioners, can imagine. It's ridiculous that you still dare to have ideas about other people's men and treat Madam Yi as an ordinary woman. You really don't know what's good for you. Hearing the old ancestor's serious tone and the truth, the Yang family's patriarch and the elders suddenly panicked. If the old ancestor said so, then it was definitely not fake. More importantly, if this matter really brought disaster to the Yang family, then wouldn't the Yang family disappear from the world? Thinking of the terrible consequences, the pale-faced elders all simultaneously glared at the Yang family head with their fire-breathing eyes. For a moment, the slightly scheming Yang family head became the target of public criticism. Ancestor, is there any way to turn the situation around? Elder Huan was the calmest and asked. If handing over Yang Bing could really solve the Yang family's crisis this time, what did it matter? Moreover, this matter was also Yang Bing's own doing. He did not sympathize with Yang Bing at all, but the key to the problem was one Yang Bing enough to appease the other party's anger? I don't know, the old ancestor of the Yang family said helplessly. It was obvious that this matter was not something he could control. Furthermore, Leng Ruoxue had also given the word, so he was really not confident. Thinking up to this point, the patriarch of the Yang family couldn't help but turn to look at the patriarch of the Yang family. Right now, he really didn't like the patriarch of the Yang family. How could he have been blind to let Yang Xiong be the patriarch? But now, he had caused such a big problem. How was he going to end this? Old ancestor, can't you think of a way? Why don't we go to the 3 little babies and ask for their help? Seeing that the old ancestor was very vexed, Elder Huan couldn't help but give an idea. It's useless. The 3 babies hate me too. They're ignoring me. Besides, you know what Yang Lin said. If I go to her now, she won't give me face. The Yang family's old ancestor said truthfully. Are we just going to wait for death like this? Elder Huan's face turned pale. If we hand Yang Bing over, maybe they'll let us live, right? An elder guessed. What if it doesn't work? I think we should just wait for death. Elder Huan glanced at the elder who spoke. The elder was speechless. Who would willingly wait for death? What was this? Elder Huan, you have a good relationship with the 3 kids. Why don't you go and plead for them? The patriarch of the Yang family, who had already lost his mind, suddenly said, Master, they don't even give face to the ancestor, so how can they respect me, an elder? Elder Huan said helplessly, but in his heart, he couldn't help but think, there's no way he'll be able to plead for her. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't want to care about the Yang family's life or death, but he felt that the couple didn't seem to be people who would kill innocents, so they shouldn't really kill the ordinary members of the Yang family. However, he didn't know how they would be satisfied with only pursuing the culprit. More importantly, he knew that the other party was definitely in a fit of anger. If he went to plead for mercy, he would definitely not have a good ending. Only a fool would rush to clean up the mess for Yang Bing and the family head. The patriarch of the Yang family was helpless when Elder Huan rejected the offer. Then, he turned to look at the patriarch. Seeing this, the Yang family's old ancestor said bluntly, Yang Xiong, since this matter was caused by Yang Bing, then you, as his grandfather, can't escape the blame. So, you have to personally explain and apologize until he's willing to forgive you. Yes. The patriarch of the Yang family braced himself and agreed. In fact, he knew very well that this matter was not easy to resolve. Otherwise, the old ancestor would not be so angry. After the meeting ended, the patriarch of the Yang family planned to meet Leng Ruoxue and the others. He had wanted to find a few elders to accompany him to boost his courage, but who knew that not a single elder was willing to step forward. This fact made him feel very stifled. Helplessly, he could only go by himself. When he arrived at the villa where Leng Ruoxue and the others were staying, Patriarch Yang saw 3 of them sitting on the swing in the courtyard, swinging back and forth. Not far away, there were a few petite and cute beastie lazily basking in the sun. When they saw him coming, those few little beastie rolled their eyes slightly and then continued to yawn and bask in the sun. As for the 3 of them, they did not even look at him. Knowing that he might not be very popular, the patriarch of the Yang family still walked to the 3 and said in a low voice, 3 little babies, why are there only you 2? Where are the adults? Hearing this, Rui Jin raised his head and replied, Mommy is packing up. Why are you packing up? The match isn't over yet. The patriarch of the Yang family played dumb and tried to get close to him. Rui Ju looked disdainfully at the Yang family head before saying, to make room for that Yang Bing. My mother is very tactful. This time, The patriarch of the Yang family couldn't pretend anymore. His old face was burning red. This little baby's words were really too sharp. He was a little ashamed. Don't worry, we'll also follow mother to make space for Yang Bing's future child. After that, Rui Jin added. The patriarch of the Yang family felt his heart clench. This little kid knows too much. Little brother, why are you talking so much nonsense with him? Even if that woman wanted to marry her father, she had to see if her father wanted her. But I think it's more likely that dad will cut off that woman. At this time, Rui's expression was unkind. He looked at the Yang family's old ancestor as if he was looking at an enemy. The Yang family's old ancestor smiled bitterly to himself. It seemed that he had offended these three little babies. Although he was not very familiar with these little babies before, at least they had never used such a tone when they spoke. The patriarch of the Yang family, who was sighing repeatedly, could only look at the three of them pitifully and say, "Little babies, you've misunderstood. Our Yang family has no intention of marrying Yang Bing off to your father. Don't listen to other people's nonsense, okay? Old man, the other people you're talking about is your Yang family. Besides, do you think we're stupid and can't tell that you're fooling us? Relax. My mother won't do anything before your elite competition is over. She promised me, so don't worry, you can live for a few more days." Saint Rui said calmly. Hearing Saint Rui's words, Master Yang's heart felt even more stifled. However, this was not the end, because Rizzi continued, "Don't even think about moving your clansmen to a safe place. By the way, I'll tell you a little secret. Even if you move all of your clansmen away, with my mother's ability, it'll be easy to find them. So, I suggest you stay here and wait for your death." Chapter 3129. Wifey, please take me with you. 1. Just wait for death. Just wait for death. These words had been circling in the head of the Yang family, making his brain buzz. At this moment, his mind even appeared to be blank for a moment, because he never dreamed that these three young children would actually have such an imposing aura when they threatened people. Could this be the inheritance of the strong bloodline? For a time, the Yang family patriarch's face was a little pale. After regaining consciousness, he suddenly had mixed feelings and his heart was so stifled that he didn't know what to say. He stared sadly at the three for a long time, trying to arouse their pity, but he didn't get the slightest response from them. After saying those words, the three of them had already thrown the dumbfounded patriarch of the Yang family aside and went to play by themselves. Looking at the three carefree little kids, even if the patriarch of the Yang family wanted to please them, he couldn't say anything. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. He couldn't help but like these three cute little kids. How could Bing or have such a vicious thought? When he thought of this, he could not stay any longer. He knew very well that if the three babies didn't like him so much, the other two probably wouldn't want to see him at all. After a short pause, Patriarch Yang left the villa. After returning to the Yang family's main courtyard, he personally went to see the great ancestor and explained his thoughts. He expressed that he was willing to hand Yang Bing over as long as the other party could calm down. He also requested to resign from his position as the Yang family's patriarch and only wanted to be an ordinary Yang family member. Through the conversation with the children, he also understood that the other party was indeed not someone the Yang family could afford to offend. Now that such a thing had happened, he could not act on his own accord. As such, the position of the Yang family patriarch would be lost sooner or later. In this way, it was better for him to take the initiative to give up the position of patriarch. At least, it would allow the elders in the family to let go of his bloodline. The patriarch of the Yang family was very satisfied with the patriarch's plan to retreat in order to advance. In fact, this was also his idea before, but he had never really put it into action. Now that Yang Xiong had taken the initiative to propose it, he would naturally go with the flow and agree. This way, he could save Yang Xiong some face. But if Yang Xiong's face was saved, what about his? As long as he thought of the couple he couldn't afford to offend, his little heart couldn't help but tremble. After calming down, the old ancestor of the Yang family gathered the elders and brought the culprits, Yang Bing and Yang Xiong, to the villa where Leng Ruoxue and the others were staying. This time he was truly asking for forgiveness. The Yang family's old ancestor really hoped that this matter could be resolved immediately, otherwise, he would be worried all day and would not be able to sleep well at night. After bringing the group of people to the villa, the Yang family's ancestor sent Yang Shan, who had a good relationship with Leng Ruoxue and the others, out first. Helpless, Yang Shan could only brace himself and look for Ji Kai, hoping that he could put in a few good words for them. At the very least, he had to let the Yang family meet Leng Ruoxue and her husband. Ji Kai already knew the other party's intention, but he did not show it. Instead, he pretended to be in a dilemma. Seeing this, Yang Shan's heart could not help but sink. Did this mean she didn't want to see him? After a long time, Ji Kai patted Yang Shan's shoulder, sighed helplessly, and said, "I understand what you're thinking, but Master and Madam said that they don't want to see the Yang family. I can't do anything about it. I'm just a butler. Just one meeting is enough. Old forefather has brought the Yang family to ask for forgiveness." Yang Shan said honestly, "What do you mean? Did someone from the Yang family offend my master and madam?" Hearing this, Ji Kai's eyes widened in disbelief, as if he didn't know what had happened. Yang Shan was a little depressed after hearing his words. Now, he didn't understand what Ji Kai was talking about. He didn't believe that Ji Kai didn't know anything about this matter. He clearly didn't want to help. Ji Kai had learned the wrong thing. Yang Shan looked at Ji Kai with sad eyes. His eyes were full of sadness, which gave Ji Kai goosebumps. Ji Kai shivered and said helplessly, "Okay, don't look at me like that. I'll tell you first that I can only help you pass the message. As for whether Master and Madam will see you or not, I can't guarantee it." "Thank you," he said. Yang Shan was very touched. Now, the three little babies were ignoring him. Fortunately, Ji Kai did not dislike him. Ji Kai turned around and left, not appearing for a long time. The Yang family waited until the flowers were about to wither before he returned. Looking at the Yang family's expectant eyes, Ji Kai sympathized with them. Of all people to provoke, they had to provoke Master and Madam. They even dared to have ideas about Master. They really didn't know how to write the word death. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glance at Yang Bing, who was gloomily following the Yang family's old ancestor. At this time, Yang Bing didn't realize the danger at all, and instead still had an arrogant and impertinent look on her face. When she saw Ji Kai looking at her, she even gave him a disdainful look. Ji Kai felt depressed for his eyes and then said, "Master and Madam have agreed to see you." When the Yang family heard this, they were instantly overjoyed. Yang Bing, who still didn't know the truth, was even more elated. However, she didn't like hearing Ji Kai call the other party Madam. Madam, he should be calling her a direct descendant of the Yang family. At this moment, the Yang family members beside Yang Bing were all immersed in the joy of the other party being willing to see them, so they didn't notice Yang Bing's dissatisfied and jealous expression at all. However, Ji Kai saw it clearly, and he despised Yang Bing. How dare such a trash have designs on Master? He felt that his master was unworthy. Ji Kai's expression was calm even though he was thinking this. After leading the Yang family to the living room, he left. However, he didn't go far. Instead, he stayed outside and eavesdropped. Without Ji Kai as the mediator, there were only Leng Ruoxue, the demon, and the Yang family members left in the living room. The couple exuded an air of authority without being angry, their entire bodies exuding a strong aura of a superior, scaring the Yang family so much that they didn't even dare to breathe. Only Yang Bing was looking at the evildoer with a dazed expression. That shy and timid little appearance was as shy as one could get. The evildoer, who was sitting on a chair with his wife expressionlessly, felt Yang Bing's fiery gaze, and his heart was instantly filled with rage. It was this hateful woman who caused his wife and children to be so rude to him, right? Although the evildoer felt that he was innocent, it was definitely his fault for making his wife angry, and the main culprit, Yang Bing, naturally became a thorn in his side. After snorting coldly, the evildoer's cold voice sounded, "The Yang family has gathered so many people here. Are they here to ask for accommodation fees or to force a marriage?" No one in the Yang family thought that the evildoer's opening remarks would be like this. They suddenly felt cold sweat. They were not here to ask for accommodation fees, and they were not here to force a marriage. Even if they were given 1,000 guts, they would not dare to. Chapter 31:30, Wifey, please take me with you, too. However, when Lung Ruoxue heard the demon's words, she couldn't help but laugh in her heart. However, she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she maintained a dejected expression as if she was about to be dismissed. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's expression, Yang Bing was instantly pleased with himself. He raised his chin and looked at Lung Ruoxue provocatively before saying, "How could we, the Yang family, charge you for your accommodation? You should know that we're going to be a family soon. But this woman can't stay here any longer." The woman that Yang Bing was referring to was naturally Lung Ruoxue. Everyone present knew that. Hence, when the Yang family members heard this, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They shot daggers at her mercilessly. This woman who could not accomplish anything but was good at causing trouble. A scourge. What a scourge. The Yang family's old ancestor trembled in anger at Yang Bing's words. However, before he could lecture Yang Bing, he heard Lung Ruoxue chuckling. "I see. Then I'll make room for you." With that, Lung Ruoxue really stood up and prepared to leave. "Honey." The demon quickly followed. However, Lung Ruoxue turned around and looked at the demon expressionlessly. "Hubby, let's get a divorce. You can stay here and be a live-in son-in-law." The demon was dumbfounded. That wasn't what they said before. My wife changed the script on her own. No way. This was absolutely not allowed. The demon was very depressed. The two of them had originally discussed to teach the Yang family a lesson and make them tremble in fear. But now it seemed that he was the one who had been taught a lesson. At the thought of this, the demon turned to the Yang family with his fire-breathing eyes and roared, "So you're here to force me into a marriage?" "No, no." The old ancestor of the Yang family felt that his heart was about to stop from fear. He wanted to explain, but the demon refused to give him the chance, pointing at Yang Bing and roaring, "Then why did you bring her here? Are you trying to make my wife run away so that you can make room for her?" "I'm innocent, sir. We've brought her here to ask for forgiveness." The old ancestor of the Yang family wanted to cry but had no tears. "Apologize? How come I didn't see it?" The demon narrowed his dark eyes and said indifferently, "My lord, we really brought her here to ask for forgiveness. The Yang family has not taught their daughter well, and has raised such a thing to cause trouble for the two of you. Our Yang family is willing to hand Yang Bing over to the two of you to deal with. We hope that the two of you will let the other members of the Yang family off on account of the Yang family's great respect for the two of you." The Yang family's old ancestor heard the demon's words and quickly said, "It's too late. Even if you're willing to let us deal with this woman, it won't be enough to dispel the hatred in my heart. Your Yang family, just wait to be exterminated," the demon said coldly. When the Yang family ancestor heard this, he couldn't help but turn ashen. The dignity of the strong must not be violated. At this time, Yang Bing also felt that something was wrong, and pulled on the sleeve of the Yang family's old ancestor, asking, "Old ancestor, what are you saying? What do you mean? Who do you want them to deal with?" "Pa!" With a crisp sound, the Yang family's old ancestor slapped Yang Bing's face. Immediately, half of Yang Bing's beautiful face swelled up. She looked at her own old ancestor in disbelief, and then heard the old ancestor say, "Unfilial daughter, you've caused the Yang family to suffer." "How did I harm the Yang family?" Yang Bing did not understand what was going on at all, and the other side of her face was slapped again. Instantly, her face swelled up like a pig's head. This time, Yang Xiong was the one who hit her. Yang Bing, who was in extreme pain, looked at his grandfather with tears in his eyes, the expression on his face even more shocked than before. It was fine if the old grandmadam hit her, but why did her grandfather, who loved her the most, also hit her? She felt wronged. Yang Xiong, on the other hand, was extremely regretful. If he had not indulged Yang Bing from a young age, pampering her to the point where she was unruly, how could Yang Bing have brought such trouble to the Yang family? At this moment, he was filled with regret. The demon and Lung Ruoxue, who were at the side, watched coldly as the Yang family dealt with Yang Bing. When they felt that the Yang family's show was over, the demon spoke. Do the Yang family's daughters hate to marry? Hearing the demon's sudden question, the Yang family elder couldn't help but be stunned. Before he could understand the meaning of the other party's words, he saw the demon raise his hand slightly and a dark space passage instantly appeared in front of the Yang family. Especially Yang Bing, when she saw this black hole that had suddenly appeared, she was so scared that her little face that was as swollen as a pig's head turned pale. Not only that, the waves of cold and inexplicable pressure emitted by this unknown passage also made her extremely uncomfortable. And how exactly did this passage appear? Other than Yang Bing, everyone from the Yang family present had heard their great ancestor mention the mystical abilities of these two lords before them. Now that they were seeing it with their own eyes, it was even more shocking and terrifying than what they had heard. At the same time, while the Yang family members were still in a daze, a slender leg stepped out of the space tunnel. Immediately after, an extremely handsome man in black walked out. After seeing Lung Ruoxue and the demon, the man bowed respectfully. This subordinate greets Master and Nether Empress. Please call me Divine Master. I'm going to divorce your master. Lung Ruoxue reminded him after hearing the man's words. The man was instantly confused. What was going on? The Nether Empress was going to abandon her lord? Oh my god! If that happened, his lord would go crazy, and the 9 Nether prison would be in chaos. Honey, how can you abandon me? This is clearly none of my business. The evil demon felt very aggrieved when he heard this. He expressed that he was very helpless about his wife changing the script, but he also knew that his wife would not really abandon him. After all, where else could she find such an obedient and well-behaved husband like him? He took it that his wife was flirting with him in a different way. However, the man's heart trembled as he listened to their unconventional flirting. Although he knew that his lord would never allow the Nether Empress to abandon him, even if it was just a joke, it was still terrifying enough. Who was it? Who had angered his lord and the Nether Empress? As his lord's #1 guard, the man expressed his anger. If the Nether Queen was unhappy, it meant that his lord was about to fly into a rage. Once his lord flew into a rage, the innocent people would be the ones in trouble. Therefore, he could not let this happen. Thinking of this, the handsome man's gaze could not help but drift to the Yang family members present. At this moment, the Yang family members had long been confused by the words, Lord, and Netherworld Empress, from the black-robed man's mouth. Why did this title sound so familiar? It couldn't be what they were thinking, right? Everyone from the Yang family was secretly shocked. At this time, they clearly felt an unfriendly and probing gaze sweeping over them like an X-ray. This not-so-friendly gaze immediately made their nerves tense. Looking at the obviously scared Yang family people, the man suddenly understood. Then he saw a pig's face. Even though he couldn't see what it originally looked like, the eyes were still glued to his lord. The man was even more clear. The man went to Lung Ruoxue's side and smiled. Dark Empress, is it this woman? I'll kill her. Please call me Divine Master. Lung Ruoxue glared at the man with her beautiful eyes as she continued to remind him. The man was helpless. His little heart was trembling. And he couldn't help but cry out in his heart. Let's not play this game anymore, okay? If he really calls you Master God, his lord will definitely find him to settle the score. Lung Ruoxue ignored the man's pleas and pointed at Yang Bing. It's this woman. She wants to marry your lord and asked me to make room for her. By the way, I also want to take the 3 children with me so that they won't be abused by her. Honey, please take me with you. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the demon thickened his skin and tried to please her. Yes, yes, take the lord with you. When the man heard this, he hurriedly agreed. He could not help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. He was secretly regretting it. If he had known that he would encounter his lord and the Netherworld Empress divorce when he was summoned, he would not have rushed over eagerly. However, it seemed like it was too late to regret now. The man really wanted to cry. Master, Netherworld Empress, you husband and wife are quarreling, but don't drag an innocent man like him into it. Why bring him along? Lung Ruoxue said unhappily. Master is very powerful. He's proficient in washing clothes, cooking rice, and warming the bed. He's also warm in the winter and cool in the summer, so he's definitely useful. He's also a standard tall, rich, and handsome man, so you definitely won't lose anything by taking him away. The man thought for a while before he stammered. He was afraid that his lord would be angry if he said this. However, to the man's surprise, the demon seemed to agree with the man's words. Not only did he not fly into a rage, but he even gave him a look that said he was worthy of being taught. The man was instantly excited. My lord, you've fallen. He didn't expect his lord to have such a low status in front of the Nether Empress. How were they going to live their days in the future? Wouldn't he be bullied to death by those people from the divine realm? Even though the man was thinking a lot, he didn't dare to show it. He turned to Lung Ruoxue and smiled. Dark Empress, I'll help you deal with this woman. She's just an ordinary human, and she can be exterminated in minutes. Why should we be angry with her? It's not worth it, don't you think? Moreover, I can guarantee with my head that the Lord will not dare to betray you, so please don't be angry with the Lord, I beg you. Yes, quickly take this woman away, but don't kill her yet. Doesn't she need men? Find her a few more. The demon ordered. Leave it to me, I promise I'll handle it properly. The man promised, then stretched out his hand, and Yang Bing was caught in his hand. Yang Bing struggled non-stop after being grabbed by the man, his mouth still shouting, let me go, let me go. The man was a little impatient, knocking Yang Bing unconscious with a punch. The Yang family members were dumbfounded by this scene. Although Yang Bing's outcome would definitely not be good, this man in front of him really did not know how to be tender towards women, right? In fact, the depressed man wished he could break the jade, so how could he still pity her? After that, the man who was holding onto Yang Bing quickly left through the space tunnel. In just a short while, other than Lung Ruoxue and the demon, there were only the Yang family members who were waiting for the verdict. Chapter 31:31. Are you alone? 1. The scene that had just happened was a little too much of a shock to the Yang family. Although they did not know where Yang Bing had been taken, they were all well aware that Yang Bing's end was guaranteed to be extremely miserable, but what about them? What would they do? For a moment, everyone in the Yang family became inexplicably nervous, feeling infinitely confused about the unknown future. They didn't even know if they could keep their lives or how many of the Yang family members could survive. But no matter what the final result was, the Yang family was destined to decline. Thinking of this, the Yang family couldn't help but have mixed feelings. How did things become like this? It must be known that their mood was quite high before, and they were also very happy that these masters could come to their families as guests, but in just a few days, the Yang family had caused a disaster? The depressed feelings of the Yang family members could not be described with words. Lung Ruoxue and the demon had been watching them from the side. Both of them knew their thoughts like the back of their hands. After a tacit exchange of glances, the evildoer spoke with a serious expression and cold voice. Although you've handed over the culprit, the Yang family didn't teach their daughter well, so we can't let them off easily. There's only one way to appease the anger of us husband and wife. You should know that, right? The demon deliberately didn't make his words too clear, so that the Yang family members could imagine it in their minds. Sure enough, as soon as his words fell, the Yang family members, led by the Yang family's ancestor, looked even more dejected. How could they not know that this man was going to exterminate the entire Yang family? Woo, he didn't even leave a spark for their Yang family. However, my sons still have to participate in your elite competition, so I'll deal with you after the competition is over. Enjoy the few days of happiness you have left. Then, the demon changed the topic and continued. Although the evildoer didn't exterminate the entire Yang family on the spot and gave them a few days to rest, it was not good news for the Yang family who knew that they would still die in the end. It was a huge torture for them. This feeling of knowing that one was about to die, but having no way to escape, was really too overwhelming. In the end, the Yang family members who were feeling extremely depressed had no choice but to leave under the demon and Lung Ruoxue's obvious intent to send their guests off. The moment the Yang family left, the demon immediately went to Lung Ruox's side and said with a fawning smile, "Honey, I've dealt with the main culprit. You're not angry with me anymore, are you? Am I angry with you?" Lung Ruoxue asked with a faint smile. No. I'm so obedient. Why would my wife be angry with me?" When the demon heard this, he hurriedly said. But then, he drooped his head and said in a low voice, dejected, "Honey, you just said that you wanted to divorce me. This makes me so sad. Honey, how can you have such thoughts? Our marriage has been confirmed by an oath. We will never divorce. Then why are you still sad?" Lung Ruoxue looked at the evildoer calmly, waiting for him to continue. "I'm sad because my wife said those words. Honey, you've hurt my fragile heart. Shouldn't you make it up to me?" The evildoer revealed his motive as Lung Ruoxue had wished. Then he smiled at his wife, who had a look of "I knew it" on her face. "It's a must. Then you can do the laundry, cook, and warm the bed. Oh, you also have the function of keeping warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Not bad." Lung Ruoxue intentionally sized up the evildoer as she laughed evilly. "Honey, I want you to compensate me, not punish me," the demon said with a bitter face. "Do you think doing something within your power for your wife is a punishment?" Lung Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes and asked in an unfriendly tone. No, I'm willing to do anything for my wife, even if it means going through a mountain of daggers or a pot of boiling oil." The demon was afraid that his wife would get angry, so he quickly said, "Cheap dad, look at you." At this moment, a clear child's voice came from outside the living room. Hearing this, the demon's face immediately darkened. This devilish brat, wouldn't he feel uncomfortable if he didn't find an opportunity to insult him? Thinking of this, the evildoer immediately strode out of the hall and grabbed Rui Sheng, who was watching the show leisurely and had no intention of running away. He raised his big palm and smacked Rui Sheng's little tender bottom a few times. Immediately, Rui Sheng burst into tears and cried loudly, "Mom, this bad guy hit your precious son." When Lung Ruoxue heard her son's words and sobs, she couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. This little brat, he would bully his father whenever he had the chance. However, in order to cooperate with her son, Lung Ruoxue still walked over and took her son from the evildoer's arms. With his mother's warm embrace, Rui Sheng buried his head in his mother's shoulder and looked up from time to time. He blinked his clear black eyes and looked at the evildoer provocatively. The evil demon was furious, but this was his own son, so he naturally couldn't really hit him. It was just that this devilish brat liked to act too much, and even though the couple knew this, they still had to cooperate, so that this brat would think that his plot had succeeded. In an instant, the demon couldn't help but sigh. It was not easy to raise a child, and it was even more difficult to raise a brat who liked to go against himself. However, he was still her son, so she still had to dote on him. The demon was helpless. Lung Ruoxue was stuck between the father and son, which gave her a headache. She had really coaxed the young and the old and was not idle at all. There was nothing that could really make her worry less. The dejected Lung Ruoxue gave the evildoer a look, and the evildoer left the living room alone with an aggrieved expression. Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, played with her 3 sons for a while and coaxed them to sleep before returning to her room. When they entered the room, the evil demon put on an aggrieved expression once he saw that his wife had returned. Lung Ruoxue's head started to hurt when she saw this. "Wifey," seeing that Lung Ruoxue didn't have much of a reaction, the demon could only call out softly. His starry eyes were looking at Lung Ruoxue with affection. Lung Ruoxue's heart started beating wildly. She couldn't take it when he seduced her like this. Lung Ruoxue wanted to escape, but before she could do so, the demon pulled her into his arms. The next day, the elite competition hosted by the Yang family continued. Before the official competition, all the ancient martial arts families had reached an agreement to agree to the request of the Yang family's ancestor. According to the thoughts of all the families, how could they not win against 3 little babies with so many families working together? If that was the case, why were they still in the ancient martial arts world? They might as well just kill themselves. Just like that, they agreed to the 500-year agreement. When the Young family's old ancestor heard this news, he wasn't very happy, because even if the Young family won this bet, they wouldn't be able to enjoy it. Chapter 31-32. Are you alone? 2. Seeing the Young family's ancestors' conflicted, dark, and lonely face, the families that had agreed to this competition were instantly overjoyed. They knew that the old man from the Young family was just holding on. In order to make the 3 little children happy, he actually used the rise and fall of the family for 500 years as a bet. If this was not courting death, what was it? However, since the bet had been agreed and the agreement had been signed, there was no reason for the old man from the Young family to go back on his word. At this moment, all the ancestors of the families decided that the agreement would take effect immediately. All the ancient martial arts families were secretly happy. In fact, how could the Young family ancestor not know what they were thinking? But at this time, he knew the pain in his heart, and he could not say it out loud. It was clearly a good thing, but he couldn't smile. At this time, the elder who had a good relationship with the Young family's ancestor walked to his side with a worried look and asked, What happened? Are you afraid that the 3 cute little kids will lose the competition? This old man's family was the only one among all the ancient martial arts families that did not participate in the huge bet. At the same time, he had the best relationship with the Young family's ancestor. Now that he saw the Young family's ancestor's sad face and dark circles under his eyes overnight, he couldn't help but be worried. What kind of big thing had happened to make the Young family's ancestors so worried? No. The Young family's old ancestor smiled bitterly. He couldn't tell this to outsiders. What's that? We've been old friends for so many years. If you need any help, just tell me. Please don't be polite. The old man said straightforwardly. It's nothing, just some family matters. Don't worry, I can handle it. The Young family's old ancestor said perfunctorily. Hearing this, the old man immediately became unhappy and said, Old man Young, we've known each other for so many years, how could I not know you? If it wasn't for something big happening, you wouldn't have shut your mouth like a clamshell. Tell me quickly what's the matter. We can discuss and solve it. You can't help me with this. Hearing the old man say this, the Young family ancestor could only say, I can't help? The situation is so serious that even the combined strength of our 2 families can't do it? The old man asked in disbelief. The Young family's old ancestor nodded, and then whispered, If you insist on getting involved, you might bring a fatal disaster to the family, so you don't have to worry about this matter. In the future, just remember to burn incense for me during the New Year and other festivals. The old man's face changed slightly when he heard this. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and look at the Young family ancestor in disbelief. Is this his funeral? What exactly? The old man still wanted to ask, but just as he said 2 words, the Young family's old ancestor pressed on his shoulder and said, Don't ask, I'm doing this for your own good. All right, don't worry, if that day really comes, he'll take care of the Young family. The old man promised. The Young family's old ancestor was afraid that his old friend would be worried, so he could only nod. In his heart, he couldn't help but think, in the future, there will be no Young family, so what's the point of taking care of them? However, he didn't dare to say this out loud. Otherwise, his old friend would definitely be shocked. After a brief exchange with his old friend, the ancestor of the Young family adjusted his mood and led the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families to the honored guests' seats. Along the way, the elders of the Young family that the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families met were all listless and dispirited. This strange scene made the ancient martial arts families very curious. They couldn't understand what was going on with the Young family. Why were they all like frost-covered eggplants, wilting? After sitting down in the guest seat, the Lee family's ancestor, who had specially sat next to the Young family's ancestor, nudged the Young family's ancestor's arm and winked at him with a smile. Your Young family couldn't have failed to reach a consensus, right? What do you mean? The Young family's old ancestor was puzzled. Look at all of you, frowning. Aren't you all afraid of losing? The Lee family's elder laughed evilly and continued, However, I have to say something about this matter. It's good to have different opinions in the family, But you can't just rely on your status as the Yang family's ancestor to make your own decisions. It's best if the family's opinions can be unified when encountering problems. This way, there won't be any family conflicts. You think I'm like you? To tell you the truth, I'm not afraid of losing, and it's not that our Yang family can't afford to lose. The Yang family's old ancestor was already in a bad mood, and after being provoked by the Li family's old ancestor like this, his anger immediately rose. TSK, you really want to keep your face and suffer? If you're not afraid of losing, why do you look like your relatives have died? Look at each and every one of you, how haggard you look. The Li family elder pointed at an elder and said, I was too excited yesterday and didn't sleep well. Is that not okay? The Yang family's old ancestor roared. You all didn't sleep well? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Li clan elder clearly didn't believe him. It's up to you to believe it. I can't be bothered with you, you'll know when the time comes. After the Yang family's old ancestor said this, he turned his head and no longer paid attention to the Li family's old man who was looking for trouble. At the same time, the elite competition continued. The three who had known about this long ago were already waiting on the stage. However, they had arrived a little early, so after waiting for more than half an hour and seeing that no one had come up to the ring to challenge their brothers, they were a little impatient. Among them, Rui Sheng and Rus kept pacing around the spacious ring with their hands behind their back. Their beautiful little faces were full of dissatisfaction and unhappiness. Only Rui Jin was still calmly eating his fruit, as if it was none of his business. In fact, he was also very anxious. However, he used his glutton nature to cover up his dissatisfaction and gave people a rather harmless feeling. The Yang family's ancestor, who was sitting in the guest seat, saw this and quickly called over an elder in charge of the competition. He instructed him to skip all the cumbersome steps and start the competition immediately. Towards the Yang family's ancestor's eagerness, the Li family's ancestor sitting beside him was extremely puzzled, and sneered, Old man Yang, are you in such a hurry to serve us for 500 years? Yep. You should be secretly happy. The Yang family's old ancestor obviously wasn't in the mood to bicker with the Li family's old man, but the Li family's old ancestor still didn't want to let him go and continued to provoke him. Of course, we will be happy. At that time, our big families will also use your Yang family members well. Don't worry, we will not let you have a moment of idle time. All right, I'll be waiting. The Yang family's old ancestor angrily said, and then no longer said anything. The Li family's elder felt that it was not interesting, so he also obediently watched the competition. The match began very quickly after all the opening steps were omitted. However, the three Pucci waited for a few minutes, but none of their opponents stepped into the ring. This made the three Pucci unhappy again. As the eldest brother, Saint Rui looked up at the Yang family's old ancestor in the honored guest's seat. The meaning in his clear black eyes was very obvious. Where is he? Where were the people they beat up in the competition? Seeing the anger in the little guy's eyes, the Yang family's ancestor couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Then he looked at the ancient martial arts family's ancestors sitting beside him and said, If your family doesn't send out a participant, how is the competition supposed to proceed? The ancestors of the major ancient martial arts families were also somewhat dissatisfied with the Yang family's ancestors' complaint. How could they be blamed? It's the family's little ones who are unwilling to be the first to go up the ring to compete with the three milk babies. In fact, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families did not expect that the juniors of their families would be unwilling to fight first because there were three babies in the ring. These little bastards. Didn't he already know about it? Why are you being so pretentious now? In fact, what the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families didn't know was that the younger generation of their families had been quite angry with the Yang family's proposal at first, thinking that it was an insult to them. They had also decided to teach the Yang family a hard lesson with the intention of making the Yang family look bad. But what they didn't expect was that when they really faced these three tender and cute children, they were all scared. He could not be terrified. Even if they were angry in their hearts, they didn't have the face to fight with the three children in the ring. Therefore, they started to shirk responsibility to each other, thinking that it would be best if they could avoid this matter. Even if they couldn't avoid it, they absolutely couldn't be the first to enter the ring. If that happened, how could they face the elders of Jiangdong in the future? Moreover, if the news of them winning against the 3 children got out, it would not be a good thing to bring honor to their ancestors. If others knew, they would only say that they were bullying the weak. It was for these reasons that the juniors of the major ancient martial arts families were not very willing to go on stage. If they really couldn't win, they absolutely couldn't go on the stage first. And if they didn't go up, the 3 of them would have to wait in the ring with their eyes wide open. Seeing that time was passing by, the Yang family's old ancestor was extremely anxious. If these 3 little treasures were to go crazy, the consequences would be unimaginable. After thinking for a moment, the Yang family's old ancestor said, "Everyone, if the participants from your families don't enter the ring within 10 minutes, it will be equivalent to them forfeiting the match and they will be judged to have lost." Hearing this, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families became anxious. Forfeiting? That was absolutely impossible. With no other choice, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families could only personally go to persuade the younger generation of their families. Unfortunately, even if they were to dry their mouths, no one was willing to stand out bravely. In the end, the major families could only decide the order of the fight by drawing lots. If they still refused to go up, they would be expelled from the family. It had to be said that the final announcement was still very useful. The drawing of lots to determine the order of appearance was also very fair. However, some people were happy while others were sad. The person who drew the first to appear seemed to have suffered a major blow, and his expression was one of unwillingness. However, no matter what, the 3 Pucci finally met their match. "You're alone." Looking at the young lady walking slowly up the ring, Saint Ray asked in dissatisfaction. "Yes, I'm the first one." The young woman replied. She looked at the 3 little babies' eyes and her pink heart kept jumping. Cute, they were really too cute. Such a cute little babe, how could she bear to do it? Shwa shwa shwa. Chapter 31-33, Will You Be My Sons? 1. The young woman was very sad, but who could she blame for her bad luck? However, it was impossible for her to attack the 3 babies. She couldn't do it. Thinking of this, the woman decided to respond to all changes by staying the same. After thinking about it, she planned to chat with the 3 children and get closer to them. At that time, the 3 little children might take the initiative to admit defeat. And she wouldn't have to be so troubled and conflicted. After preparing what she wanted to say, the young woman put on a friendly and harmless smile and said to the 3 little babies, "Auntie will bring you to play, okay? Play?" When the 3 of them heard this, they couldn't help but look up at the woman. They were here to beat people up, not to play? Besides, what's so fun about this self-proclaimed auntie in front of me? The young woman's words made the 3 of them feel baffled. Seeing that the 3 of them didn't say anything and only frowned as they looked at her with a conflicted expression, the woman's love for them grew even stronger. "Little babies, can you be my sons? It'll definitely make you the happiest little kids in the world." The young woman couldn't help but say as she looked at the 3 of them and liked them more and more. Be a son? The 3 of them were stunned. Was this person not here to fight with them, but to snatch their dear mother's son? In an instant, the 3 of them sympathized with their poor mother. Why were these women either trying to snatch their mother's man or their son? Moreover, they were not really those little children who knew nothing and only knew how to eat and sleep all day. Was it really good for this grandmother to lie to them like this? The 3 of them looked down on the person in front of them. However, the person in front of them didn't do anything bad to them, so they really couldn't just go up and beat him up. However, the 3 of them were extremely annoyed. So what if it was a competition? Why did he come to the ring to snatch their son? What was this? The 3 of them had completely discovered that the people here were not mentally normal. Otherwise, why would they always have whimsical thoughts? At the same time, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families sitting in the VIP seats were also confused by the young woman's words. They did not know how to react. They were mainly surprised and didn't know what was wrong with this young woman, while the ancestor of the Yang family was speechless and full of black lines. He admitted that the three animals were so cute that he once had the idea of kidnapping them home, but that was just a thought and he never succeeded. However, after knowing that the parents of the three animals were very powerful, he completely put down that idea. But now, it was obvious that there were some unlucky people who didn't know the truth and were fascinated by the three cute and beautiful appearances. These three were beautiful and extremely cute on the outside, but they were little demons as black as ink in their bones. Whoever had designs on them, regardless of gender, would definitely not have a good end. It could be said that the Yang family's ancestor already knew the three of them quite well, because he had suffered a lot in their hands. But after suffering losses, he still treated the three of them as usual, even like a moth to a flame. He had no choice. Who asked him to be so willing? As for the current one, he didn't know how many people had been fascinated by the three little babies. The Yang family's old ancestor felt some sympathy for the young woman on the stage. However, he was in an extremely bad mood right now, so he would not say anything. And it just so happened that the young woman on the ring was sitting next to him. She belonged to Old Man Li, who he hated and liked to go against him the most. As such, he could not wait to watch a good show. The Yang family's elder, who was ready to watch the show, quietly glanced at the Li family's elder. He wanted to turn his gaze back to the ring. However, although his glance was very light, he was still discovered by the Li family's elder, who had been secretly observing him. The Li clan's elder smiled and said, "These three little children are indeed cute. No wonder even the granddaughter of my clan can't help but want to recognize them as her sons. How about it, why don't we get married?" "What marriage?" The Yang family's old ancestor immediately asked with vigilance. "Send your three little kids to my house and let them be my live-in son-in-law. It's the most popular thing now." Li clan's elder said with a hint of pride. You old fart, to think you could think of this. Raise? These three children are only a little over a year old, and you already have ideas about them? I'm telling you, stop daydreaming. This is absolutely impossible." The Yang family's ancestor was furious when he heard this. However, he didn't dare to casually reveal the identities of the three parents, so he could only angrily refuse. "What's impossible? When your Yang family becomes a subsidiary family of our Li family, as long as we want these three beautiful little babies, you have to take the initiative to give them to us. This is the rule. Old Man Yang, don't you understand?" Seeing that the Yang family's old ancestor was as angry as a rooster with its feathers blown up, the Li family's old man was extremely happy. In the confrontation between the two, Old Man Yang had the upper hand most of the time. Now, three little children could make him angry, which made the Li family's ancestor quite excited. "Rules my ass. I'm telling you, that's impossible." The Yang family's old ancestor angrily shouted, his face red with anger. "I've said it before, nothing is impossible. Forget it, I won't ask you for her now. After the Yang family becomes a subsidiary family of the Li family, I'll ask you for her. Let's see if you dare to refuse." The Li family's old ancestor was getting more and more proud as he spoke. If he had a tail, he would probably raise it to the sky. "I'm sorry, but your Li family will never have that chance." After saying this, the Yang family's old ancestor no longer paid attention to the Li family's old man, who was a little too smug, and turned his attention to the ring. At this time, Saint R, who was in the ring, suddenly turned his head and looked at the guests' seats. This glance immediately gave the old ancestor of the Yang family a bad feeling. Sure enough, just as he thought of this, he heard Rui Sheng suddenly cry at the top of his voice, "Mom, someone is going to fight with you for your son. Mommy, someone is going to steal Daddy from you and become our mommy. Mom, someone is trying to snatch your cute son as a live-in son-in-law. Dad, Mom, Grandpa, Uncle, Grandpa Drayan, you won't be able to see our three cute little ones." He knew it. Hearing what Saint Ray said, the old ancestor of the Yang family could not help but turn pale. Although this matter had nothing to do with the Yang family, there were many strong people who were unpredictable. Who knew if those two terrifying lords would blame this matter on the Yang family? The Yang family's old ancestor suddenly felt that he was very miserable. Why did everything have to be encountered by his Yang family? Glaring at the old man from the Li family who liked to provoke him, the Yang family's old ancestor said angrily, "All right, now our Yang family has your Li family as a companion." "What do you mean?" The Li family's old ancestor, who was also shocked by Saint Rui's words, asked with a confused look. He really didn't expect that his joke would be heard by the child. That little boy's ears were really good. Chapter 31-34, Will You Be My Sons? 2. I mean your Li family can clean up and wait for death. The Yang family's old ancestor said in an unpleasant tone. "Old man Yang, you've gone too far. I just made a few casual jokes. Do you have to curse our entire Li family? I really didn't expect you to have such vicious thoughts. To think that I've always treated you as a friend." The Li clan's elders said angrily. "I'm telling the truth, why don't you believe me? Besides, do you really see me as a friend? I don't believe you at all. Also, I don't see you as a friend. I just know a lot of them." The Yang family's old ancestor said honestly. "You do." Elder Li was so angry that he couldn't speak. Very quickly, his eyes were also wide open. Because at this time, in addition to the 3 little children and the young woman, there was another handsome man with an extraordinary temperament on the ring. As soon as this man, who was like a banished immortal, appeared, all the women present were petrified. Pairs of watery eyes filled with love stared at the handsome banished immortal on the ring without blinking. Due to the immortal-slaying man's sudden appearance, not only did it make many women infatuated, but it also shocked many people. Therefore, everyone forgot to think about how this person had appeared in the ring. "Uncle, you won't be able to see us. Someone is trying to rob us." Seeing Leng Ruhan suddenly appear in the ring, Rui Xing immediately complained. The little devil in his heart had long laughed. "With me here, who would dare to rob you?" Leng Ruhan's expression turned cold when she heard this. "This old lady wants us to be her sons, and her family's ancestor wants us to be live-in son-in-law. Uncle, is that live-in son-in-law the one Mom and Dad were talking about yesterday?" Saint Ray asked innocently. Leng Ruhan's face darkened when she heard that. "Oh no, my nephews. Can you not mention the words, live-in son-in-law? Your father will fly into a rage. Why are they the same as the Yang family? They all want our man to be a live-in son-in-law? Uncle, do you want to be one?" Saint Ray ignored Leng Ruhan's helplessness and continued to speak. This time, Leng Ruhan was in a mess. What did this have to do with him? How did he get shot for no reason? "My nephews, did Uncle dote on you for nothing? You're putting your uncle in a trap like this? Uncle, are you willing or not?" Seeing that Leng Ruhan did not say anything, Saint Ray asked reluctantly. "Uncle?" Leng Ruhan, who was about to be driven mad by Saint Ray, was about to answer when another shy voice interrupted her. "I'm willing." The young lady who spoke immediately lowered her head, blushing. She did not dare to look at Leng Ruhan. Leng Ruhan was speechless. "What are you willing to do? It's none of your business, so why are you interrupting? You're willing to be a live-in son-in-law." Saint Ray obviously did not want to let go of this new topic and asked, "Brother, a live-in son-in-law should be a man. How can she be a woman?" "That's true." Rui Xing pretended to have just reacted. As Leng Ruhan looked at his 2 nephews' excellent performance, he started to pity the young woman. However, in order not to hinder his nephew's interest, he really could not speak casually. It was fine as long as his nephews did not set up a trap for him. Otherwise, he would fly into a rage. "I'm willing to marry you." Seeing that her words had been misunderstood by the cute baby, the young woman quickly corrected her. "You're going to marry our father?" Saint Rui was shocked. "We're done for, our poor mother is going to go home again." Vijay also said loudly, "Brother, let's quickly pack up and leave with Mom." Rui Jin, who had been eating silently, also interrupted. Looking at the situation, Leng Ruhan's target of sympathy had changed to his poor brother-in-law. What was going on? Why did it have to do with that evildoer? At this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the evildoer, who had been observing the situation on the stage through the screen, were so angry that they were gritting their teeth. If they had known that this would happen, they would not have given birth to these 3 devilish children. How could they be other people's sons? Instead of looking forward to him and his wife being in love, he was looking for an opportunity to make his wife leave him. What kind of stinky son was this? The demon was really about to die of anger. Lung Ruoxue could only try her best to comfort her husband who was going crazy. In her heart, she was actually quite helpless. Her son liked to go against his husband, and both the palm and the back of his hand were meat. It would be difficult for her to help anyone. Such a fact made Lung Ruoxue deeply feel that she was the most difficult mother and wife in the world. Ever since their son was born, the father and son fight in their family had never stopped. It was foreseeable that such a situation would continue for many years in the future. It would only be over when his son got married and had his own family. Lung Ruoxue sighed in her heart. At this moment, the young woman in the ring saw that the 3 children had misunderstood her meaning and hurriedly said, "No, no. I'm willing to marry your uncle." The young woman spoke in a hurry. She lowered her head after she finished speaking. Lung Ruhan's face turned black when she heard this. When he came up to the ring, did he propose to this woman? He clearly didn't remember it. But how could it be misunderstood now? Lung Ruhan was not in a good mood. He even had the urge to beat someone up. On the other hand, the evildoer who saw everything through the light screen was in a bad mood. Looking at the evil demon laughing as he collapsed on the bed, Lung Ruoxue could only silently pity her pitiful brother in her heart. Her brother had clearly gone up to the arena to support the 3 disobedient children, yet he had unexpectedly gotten himself a cheap wife. One could only imagine how depressed her brother must be. Lung Ruhan was indeed depressed, and the 3 of them were a little unhappy too. They were obviously trying to mess with their cheap father, but why did it end up with their uncle? Unhappy, very unhappy. Are you sure you're going to marry our uncle and not Dad? Saint Ray, who was very unhappy, confirmed. Yes. The young woman nodded. But my uncle doesn't want to marry you. So let's just fight. Saint Ray was angry and did not want to talk anymore. Faced with this sudden turn of events, the young lady was a little dumbfounded. On the other hand, Lung Ruhan could not help but smile. Her own nephew was really cute no matter how she looked at him. Lung Ruhan's smile instantly mesmerized the young woman, causing her to become infatuated again. Seeing this, Saint Ray was even more unhappy. Facing the female passerby who was infatuated with his uncle, he only had one sentence to reply to her: "Don't be a toad lusting after swan meat. How can you say that your uncle is a toad?" The young lady, who was brought back to her senses by Saint Rui's words, said with a face full of dissatisfaction. At this time, she saw that the 3 little babies were not as cute as before. How could a junior talk to an elder like that? The toad I was talking about was you. Rui Sheng patted his forehead and said speechlessly. He realized that women who were infatuated with him, other than being self-righteous, had a shockingly poor ability to understand. This time, the young woman could no longer keep a straight face. Soon, there was a burst of laughter around her. The woman's originally beautiful face was red with anger and even distorted. Which young and beautiful woman could stand being called a toad in public? You rude little brat, didn't your parents teach you manners? Is this how you talk to your elders? The angry woman was so angry that she could not care about maintaining her gentle appearance anymore. She angrily pointed at Rui Sheng and shouted. She was wrong. These 3 children were not cute at all, and they were even detestable. Elder? Is he referring to you? Saint Ray asked in confusion. Of course. The young woman nodded. But you're not my elder. May I ask, who are you to my family? Saint Ray continued to ask. Although I'm not related to your family, I'm older than you, so you have to respect me. The young woman said. Like this? But Mom said that some people don't need to be respected, like toads who want to eat swan meat. Saint Ray laughed evilly. Originally, they didn't have any deep enmity with this young woman, but he hated the words of the old man in the honored guests' seats too much. He actually wanted to raise them up and even want them to be live-in son-in-law. If they dared to plot against them, they had to have the ability to withstand the revenge of the 3 brothers. This was only the first step towards this woman, who asked them to be a family. Since young, the three brothers did not know that there was a cause for resentment and a debtor for debts. They only knew that no matter what means were used and where they started, it was enough as long as they could punish the bad guys. It was precisely because of this that this young woman, who was only infatuated with him, became the first person they wanted to attack. How could they not pay a price for having any ideas about them? However, Saint Ray did not expect this woman to reveal her true colors so quickly. Wasn't her change of attitude a little too fast? Where's your gentleness? Where's your kindness? Was he fed to pigs? Saint Ray expressed his disdain. The young woman, who had been provoked once again, was so angry that she had lost her mind, especially when she heard the laughter of the women around her. She hated the three children in front of her from the bottom of her heart. There was naturally no need to pamper an unlikable child. As the woman thought of this, she had already swiftly and fiercely attacked the three of them. The three of them calmly waited for the woman to pounce on them. Lung Ruhen, who was at the side, watched coldly from the side and did not move. On the contrary, some of the sentimental women watching the battle from below the ring couldn't help but worry for these three little children. No one had expected that the Li family's woman would be so provoked that she would attack so ruthlessly. Was there a need to treat three little children like this? He even used the Li family's ultimate move. He wanted to kill the three little babies. Chapter 31-35. Whose turn is it? Be careful. This is the Li family's unique skill. It can kill. All of a sudden, a voice filled with worry was heard. This voice was especially clear among the cries of surprise. However, Lung Ruhen, who was on the stage, could not help but frown when she heard it. It was reasonable to say that the other party's reminder should have been out of good intentions, but they were clearly supposed to be fully focused on the competition. If they were disturbed by this sound, it would definitely disturb the state of mind of the participants. If it were not his three nephews on the stage at this moment, but someone with a weaker mind, they might have been affected by this sound. More importantly, the person who warned him was a woman. It was not that Lung Ruhan was looking down on the woman. It was just that although the woman's face was filled with worry, her eyes kept drifting towards him. This fact made Lung Ruhan exceptionally irritated. She really wanted to beat someone up. Lung Ruhan suppressed the displeasure in her heart and did not want to bother with the girl who was trying to gain advantage in front of him. However, who knew that the girls who were watching from below the ring actually imitated her and started to shout loudly, not to be outdone. For a moment, the entire competition ground became a sea of women's screams. The atmosphere was rather heated, and the gazes that were cast on Lung Ruhen looked as if they could not wait to strip him naked. Lung Ruhan's handsome face darkened bit by bit, and the three who had been disturbed were also particularly displeased. Rui Xing was so angry that he pouted his little mouth and shouted at the top of his voice, "All of you shut up! I'll throw all of you out if you continue to argue. Women are so annoying and troublesome." Rui Xing pouted his little mouth and said that he hated women, which made many people laugh. Some people even teased, "Little guy, you're still young, of course you don't know the good things about women." Women are good? Well, there are some good ones, at least our mother is, but I don't dare to say anything about the ones outside the ring. I heard that a woman is equivalent to 500 ducks. Quick, count how many ducks are down there? After hearing this, many of the onlookers were speechless. It should be known that those who could come to watch the arena were all daughters of ancient martial arts families. But now, they were said by a little boy that each of them was comparable to 500 ducks. Who could accept this? Sure enough, a woman's face turned red with anger and she shouted, "What do you know, you little kid? You haven't even grown your hair. TSK, this young master knows a lot. At least I know that you're shouting and yelling because of my uncle, but I want to tell you, don't have any ideas about my uncle. Don't even think about eating swan meat if you're a toad. By the way, toads are talking about you women, don't get it wrong." Saint Ray was not annoyed by the woman's words and replied with a smile. However, his words made the women below the ring angry enough. In just a short while, they also deeply felt that the little children in front of them were really not cute. but who asked them to have a good uncle, so the women were quite conflicted. If they really offended these 3 little children, they were afraid that they would not have any chance to be their auntie. So depressed, so frustrated. The girls were about to go crazy. At this moment, an extremely calm voice was heard. "Brother, be careful. That crazy woman is running toward you." The one who said this was Rue Jean. At this moment he was still calmly eating his favorite fruit, but his eyes had been focused on the young woman who had been a little crazy before. Now that he saw that crazy woman heading towards his brother, and his brother was busy chatting with the women below the stage, he had no choice but to speak up. Of course, when he said this, he was also a little dissatisfied. He was clearly sitting in the ring obediently and was acting like a quiet, beautiful man. He also looked weak. Why didn't that crazy woman attack him, but instead went to find trouble with his brother? Depressed. It was really too depressing. The foodie Rue Qiao was extremely unhappy. He felt that not only did that crazy woman have no taste, she was also looking down on him and ignoring him. At the thought of this, he glared at her with his dark, starry eyes and then threw the fruit core in his hand. The young lady who was running towards Rue Sheng fell to the ground before she could get close to him. Rue Sheng, who was ready to fight back, could only withdraw his leg awkwardly. He then looked at the young lady who had fallen to the ground and asked in surprise, "What is this? Body? Are you hungry or tired?" Saint Rui's suspicion made most of the people in the VIP seats who noticed this scene feel helpless. At this moment, they deeply felt that this little guy was too bad. He clearly knew that it was his younger brother's doing, but he still pretended to be innocent. What was a weak body? This was clearly a scheme. However, when they saw the innocent and ignorant little boy in front of them, the people in the VIP seats couldn't help but roar in their hearts. "Shameless, he's really too shameless. Who raised this two-faced little boy? Why are you so bad?" At the same time, a few gazes also simultaneously floated to the Yang family's old ancestor, looking at him and directly exploding. "Why are you all looking at me? There aren't any flowers on my face." The Yang family's old ancestor was so angry that he roared, "Your Yang family's little kid is not simple." Seeing that the Yang family's old ancestor was peeved, an old man said in a very reserved manner, "That's right." Although the Yang family's old ancestor was depressed, he still proudly raised his head and said, "You're so smug. When the competition is over, let's see how your Yang family can continue to show off." The Li family's ancestor, who was sitting beside the Yang family's ancestor, couldn't bear to see the Yang family's ancestor being so proud, immediately provoked him. At the mention of this, the Yang family's old ancestor became a little listless. The pain in his heart was not enough to be explained to outsiders, but at this moment, he didn't dare show it on his face, so he could only force a smile and say, "I'm thinking of waiting for the competition to end so that your families can quickly send people to participate in the competition. If you continue to dawdle, the sky will turn dark. What are you so anxious about? Isn't the Li family still in the ring?" Another old man reminded. The Li family. The ancestor of the Yang family was about to say that the Li family would leave the ring very soon. However, before he could say this, he saw that the young woman of the Li family, who could not stand the stimulation of Saint Rui's words, rolled her eyes and fainted. Then she was kicked off the ring by Saint Rui. This time, the Yang family's ancestor didn't even need to say anything. The other family's ancestors all had ugly expressions as they waited for the next contestant to come up the stage. The ancestors of the various ancient martial arts families had many complaints about this disappointing junior of the Li family. This had also disrupted their plans, making them quite dissatisfied. More importantly, they didn't know why, but they felt a faint sense of uneasiness in their hearts. At this moment, on the arena, Saint Rui was also depressed. Because before he could even kick her, that crazy woman had been finished off by his brother's fruit core. This made him feel no sense of accomplishment. No, the next opponent must be him. Saint Rui looked resentfully at Rui Yen, who was still gnawing on the fruit, and his eyes were very firm. Although his idea was beautiful, it was a pity that Rui also had the same idea, and he acted a little earlier than him. The opponent who had just stepped onto the ring did not even have the time to say his opening remarks before he was kicked off the ring by a shadow that suddenly flew to his side and fainted. Then, the shadow stood still on the stage and shouted at the contestants, "Seats, next." At this time, the disciples of the ancient martial arts families who were sitting in the contestants' seats were at a loss. After all, they were in the ring, so shouldn't they go through the necessary procedures? Shouldn't the polite words be said in a few simple sentences? But why did he kick him without saying anything? Could this match still be enjoyable? Next. Whose turn is it? Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Ruiz asked again, but unfortunately, no one answered him. Such a situation made Ruiz's pretty and cute little face become serious. How detestable! These people actually dared to ignore him. Ruiz was very angry. The consequences were very serious. Then he stretched out his little hand and pointed at the disciples of the ancient martial arts families in the contestant seats. He shouted with a majestic aura, "All of you, come at me together." All together? This time, the participants from the ancient martial arts families were so depressed that they wanted to scratch the wall. It wasn't that they couldn't gang up on him, but it also depended on who they were up against, right? They couldn't get past the barrier in their hearts if they were asked to gang up on 3 little children. How strong must one's mental endurance be to be so thick-skinned as to bully the 3 little kids? However, it was obvious that the child in front of him was serious. Furthermore, he was very serious. Seeing that they didn't respond for a long time, Ruiz's beautiful little face darkened. The furious Ruiz simply jumped off the high ring and ran towards the ancient martial family's contestants. When the participants from the ancient martial arts family saw this, they just looked at the actions of the little boy in front of them in a daze and felt puzzled. What was he trying to do? What could he do? Of course, I'm going to challenge you all one-on-one. As triplets, Rui Sheng and Rui Qiao understood what Rui Zi meant. He couldn't wait. In fact, they couldn't wait any longer. The opponent was too long-winded and not decisive at all. It was just a fight. Why was she being so coy like a big girl? However, compared to Rui Zi's anxiousness, the two of them were still very calm. As soon as Rui Zi ran to the ancient martial arts family contestants, he first stretched out his right fist and punched the unlucky guy on his left, then turned around and kicked the waist of someone on his right. Suddenly, 2 painful groans sounded, and the small faces of the 2 people who were hit first turned pale. The intense pain in their bodies made them almost unable to stand steadily, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Ruiz directly ignored the 2 people's slightly panicked gazes, and instead showed off his skills and mixed into the crowd, killing in all directions. In a short moment, the contestant area was stirred into a pot of porridge by a small person. Seeing this, Rui Sheng and Rui Yan also jumped off the stage and rushed into the contestant area. If they didn't attack now, they wouldn't have the chance to fight anymore. The 3 children were like a competition as they went up on stage. Lung Ruhan, who had been standing quietly on the stage, could not help but frown when she saw the chaotic scene in front of her. My nephews. He was really impatient. He was also becoming more and more violent. Chapter 31-36. Not entering the ring doesn't count as a win. Lung Ruhan couldn't help but sigh. Her nephews' personalities were really like that evil maness. Of course, the 3 of them would definitely not be willing to let Lung Ruhan think that way. However, they could not be bothered to figure out their uncle's thoughts at this moment. They only wanted to fight to their heart's content. Although this was a bit of a bully, they were always the ones being bullied when they fought with their cheapskate dad and the others, so they enjoyed the feeling of bullying. Moreover, they were just 3 little kids, so they didn't feel guilty at all for bullying others. It was just a fight. They were just winning with their numbers. The 3 of them were having a good time, but the contestants from the ancient martial arts families, who were sandbags, felt extremely depressed. None of them had expected that these 3 little children would actually have such strength. This was great. They had embarrassed themselves. So many people were actually being chased around by 3 little children. This kind of situation simply made people not dare to look straight at it. Not only that, but the 3 babies specialized in face smacking, so at this moment, everyone's faces were more or less injured. Their seriously injured faces were so swollen that they could not be seen. Even so, the three of them did not intend to stop here. After all, such an opportunity was too rare, and they had waited long enough. Therefore, according to the three of them, they had to take back their capital. As a result, the participants from the ancient martial arts families were in trouble. The three of them didn't even care about gender when they beat people up. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they received the same treatment. Could be said to be fair and just. However, even if the three children were fair and just, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families sitting in the VIP seats were quite upset when they saw their own children being chased by the three little children. This scene was really too ugly. To put it nicely, the adults were giving in to the three little children, but this was just deceiving themselves and others. People with discerning eyes could see that this was clearly their own children who had no ability to fight back and could only run around. Old man Yang, your three kids are not simple. At this time, the Li family's ancestor, who was sitting next to the Yang family's ancestor, was the first to speak. From his tone, his words were very calm, but the Yang family's ancestor, who knew him well, knew that this old man was starting to look for trouble again. After hearing this, the Yang family's old ancestor's face remained calm and composed, but his heart was still bitter. These three were not simple. With parents like that, it would be strange if he was simple. Although the current situation was very advantageous to the Yang family, the Yang family's old ancestor was facing the unknown future of the Yang family, so he couldn't be happy. However, he didn't want outsiders, especially his archenemy, to see through him. Thus, even though his heart was heavy, he could only put on a relaxed and happy expression. Of course, there are no simple children in the Yang family. His arrogant tone made the Li family's elders' anger rise. If he could, he really wanted to curse out loud, but now was obviously not the time. Trying his best to control his anger, the Li family's elder spoke again. Old man Yang, although your three little kids are not simple, they are also a bit dishonest. How could they not follow the rules in such an official competition? What would happen to the families that would host the competition in the future? If every participant learns from your Yang family, wouldn't the elite competition be a mess? What do you mean by that? Hearing the Li family old man's words, the Yang family's old ancestor immediately asked with a vigilant look. He knew the old man from the Li family too well and knew that he was up to no good. What I mean is, don't think that these three kids have won just like that. The competition still needs to be decided in the arena. Li clan's elders said indifferently. In the arena? If I'm not mistaken, you still want those guys who are scurrying around to fight with the three little guys in the arena? The Yang family's old ancestor asked with uncertainty. Although he had long guessed that some ancient martial arts families would not admit defeat so easily, he did not expect the Li family's elder to be so shameless. It was obvious that the winner of this competition could be determined at a glance, but he still wanted to turn the tables? Moreover, it was obvious that the Li clan elder's words had received the approval of many old fellows. Looking at those ancestors of the other ancient martial arts families who didn't speak, but their expressions clearly revealed their thoughts, the Yang family ancestor couldn't describe the feeling in his heart. These guys who wanted to save face at this time, still wanted to struggle, was there any meaning to this? The Yang family's ancestor decided to look down on them, but at this time, he heard the Li family's ancestor say shamelessly, "What do you mean by running around? If you don't know how to speak, then don't use random words, okay? This is clearly our family's younger generation giving way to your family's three little children, so this can't be considered their victory." Since he had already said so much, the Li family elder decided to go back on his words. In any case, he was certain that the Yang family old man couldn't eat him. However, fortunately, the Yang family's ancestor knew the Li family's ancestor too well, so he wasn't surprised at all by his words. On the contrary, if the other party didn't act so shamelessly, the Yang family's ancestor would really be worried. However, the Yang family's old ancestor still deliberately said angrily, "Give way to our three children? Old man Li, don't you feel guilty for saying such words?" Or could it be that all of you agree with Old Man Lee's words and think that it's the younger generation in your own family who's giving way to these three little kids? After angrily criticizing the Lee family's ancestor, the Young family's ancestor deliberately went to ask the other ancestors present. After being asked this way, a few of the shy ancient martial arts family's ancestors immediately blushed. However, they were now on the same boat as the Lee family, and the current situation was quite unfavorable to the ancient martial arts families. Therefore, even though they knew that denying it would be very shameless, they still firmly stood on the side of the Lee family's ancestor. The Young family's old ancestor, who had already expected this result, was even angrier. Then, everyone heard him shout, "All right. I've only truly gotten to know you today, and we can't even be friends in the future. In addition, tell me now, how can I convince you to admit defeat? I'm giving you a chance now. If you still want to go back on your word, don't blame me for being impolite." The Young family's ancestor had given the last order to all the ancient martial arts families, but at this moment, none of the ancient martial arts families dared to open their mouths easily. After all, this would determine the future of their families. If so many families joined forces and still lost to those three little kids, they would really have no face to stay in the ancient martial arts world in the future. You guys should talk. I'm giving you a chance. Seeing that the ancient martial arts families were acting dumb, the Young family's ancestors shouted angrily. Hearing this, the ancient martial arts families couldn't help but look at each other. After communicating with each other with their eyes for a long time and reaching a tacit understanding, the Lee family's ancestors spoke on behalf of them. "We have to decide the winner in the arena. If our disciples lose to your three children in the arena, we will be convinced. Is this true?" The Young family's old ancestor asked with a puzzled look. "It's true, Old Man Yang. Do you doubt my credibility?" The Lee family's elders saw that the Young family's elder didn't believe him, so he was quite angry. "You still have a reputation?" The Young family's old ancestor sneered after hearing this. This guy could go back on his word at any time, and he still had the nerve to talk about credibility with him. What a joke. "Of course." Lee Clan's elder nodded his head with certainty. "But I don't believe you. All of you, write a written pledge for me. If you continue to act shamelessly, it'll make your actions public. At that time, you'll see how you'll still have the face to stay in the ancient martial arts world." The Young family's ancestor requested. Hearing that they had to write a written pledge, the faces of the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families turned ugly. After all, their ancestors had been famous for many years and were well respected in the ancient martial arts world. Now that they were being questioned like this, they couldn't help but feel embarrassed. However, the current situation was very obvious. If they didn't write a written pledge, the old man from the Young family wouldn't let this matter rest. The ancestors of the ancient martial arts families communicated with their eyes again. In the end, it was the Lee family's ancestor who came forward and said, "We can write a written pledge, but you have to write one too." "What should I write?" The Young family's old ancestor was amused by these words. His serious face was full of confusion. "You have to promise that your three children won't do the same thing again. They have to defeat our children in the arena fair and square to win." The Lee clan elder requested. The Young family's old ancestor was a little embarrassed. Those three little things would not listen to him. At the thought of this, the Young family's old ancestor's gaze could not help but drift to Lung Ruhen, who was on the stage. He believed that the conversation between the various ancient martial arts families would definitely not be hidden from this person. He used his eyes to ask for Lung Ruhan's opinion. After getting Lung Ruhan's nod of approval, old ancestor Yang was finally at ease. Soon after, the Young family's old ancestor agreed, "I can write a written pledge, so don't even think about going back on your word." In this way, the ancient martial arts families who had reached an agreement added their own written pledge to the agreement that had already been signed. In the distance, the three who already knew the outcome of this matter were rather impatient. What the hell is this? They had clearly won, but now the other party was denying it. This situation made the three of them very, very angry. However, since his uncle had already agreed to this, they had to give him face. The three of them returned to the ring angrily with their pretty little faces. The people who had been beaten up by them did not dare to approach the ring. They were already afraid of the three of them. Don't waste the time of the young masters. Hurry up and fight with us. Otherwise, we won't win. Seeing that the punching bags under the ring didn't respond, Saint Ray said angrily. That's right. Hurry up and get on the stage. This is an opportunity that your ancestors have fought for you to lose fair and square. Don't waste it. Ruiz, who was also unhappy, also said venomously. After being told off by the two little kids, the expressions of the punching bags below the ring were very interesting. Most of them were not as thick-skinned as their ancestor. At this moment, they wished they could just faint. This was really too embarrassing. Unexpectedly, the foodie Rui Qiao, who had been in a bad mood, did not plan on letting them go. She took a bite of the fruit and said, "Ants, hurry up and enter the arena. If you really don't want to fight, you can just admit defeat. Just don't waste any more of our precious time." Chapter 31-37. I just want to have a heart-to-heart talk with you. After the three of them spoke, their faces darkened and they maintained the same expression. They glared at the ancient martial arts family participants who were pushing each other around. After being stared at by the three of them with disdain for a while, the participants couldn't hold it in. If they could, they wanted to faint, but they were in good spirits. Should I pretend to faint? Many of the participants muttered to themselves. The three people standing on the stage could tell what some people were thinking, and they snorted coldly. Don't even think about pretending to faint. If you want to faint, you have to faint in the arena, otherwise it's not considered a win. These words fully expressed the anger and dissatisfaction of the three. When the many competitors below the stage heard this, how could they still have the face to faint? However, if they didn't faint, they didn't want to go up the ring and fight with the three fierce beasts. At this time, all kinds of feelings such as confusion, depression, and helplessness lingered in the hearts of the participants. They were very uncomfortable. Not only them, but some of the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families sitting in the VIP seats were also a little uncomfortable at this time. Many of the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families were dissatisfied with the three of them not giving them any face. They deeply felt that although the three little guys of the Yang family looked extremely cute, how could their words be so heart-piercing? Thinking of this, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families all turned their eyes to the Yang family's ancestor. The meaning of criticism was quite obvious. As for the Yang family's old ancestor, he completely ignored these accusing eyes. Seeing the Yang family's ancestor acting dumb, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families were even more dissatisfied, and someone even directly said, "Old man Yang, your Yang family's three little children are really sharp-tongued." In fact, he wanted to say that he had a poisonous tongue. He didn't say that he was leaving some face for the Yang family's ancestor. The Yang family's old ancestor didn't seem to care about these words at all, and even smiled. "Thank you for the compliment. However, you have all the time you want to praise the three little fellows. Right now, you should hurry up and get the participants from your respective families to enter the arena." This was too immoral. This is a competition. I hope you all can take it seriously. After the Yang family's ancestor finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to them. When the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families heard the Yang family's ancestors' words, their hearts were even more stifled. Were they trying to stall for time? It's clearly the three little kids of your Yang family who are too abnormal, okay? Which family's child could fight in the arena? In an average family, such a young child might not even be able to walk steadily. However, these three had already beaten up the participants from the ancient martial arts families. Thinking of this, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families felt depressed. What a bully! They were really bullying him. At this moment, all the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families felt that the Yang family was bullying them. Using these three little children to fight in the arena, as long as their opponents were not cold-blooded, ruthless, and extremely evil, they would not easily do it. These three were definitely comparable to biological weapons and had great destructive power. looking at the arrogant and angry three in the ring. For a moment, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families almost sent their own children to the ring. However, as soon as they thought about how their children were walking unsteadily with snot flowing out of their noses, the elders immediately dispelled that idea. If they really sent their baby on stage, it would be even more embarrassing. The ancestors couldn't help but sigh. They looked at the three with love and hate. Why didn't they have such descendants in their families? Why did all the good things go to the Yang family's old ancestor? It was not fair. It was so unfair. In an instant, the eyes of the patriarchs were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred as they looked at the Yang family's patriarch. The Yang family's old ancestor could feel several burning and resentful gazes on him, but he could only sit calmly. In fact, he knew what those people were thinking, but he couldn't say anything, because these three weren't his. At the same time, the three people in the ring felt that the old men in the VIP seats were communicating with their eyes, and the small flames in their hearts rose a little higher. As the big brother, Saint Rui was naturally the first to express his dissatisfaction. He roared, "Are you guys done? If you want to send messages with your eyes, then send them back home. Let them get on the arena quickly. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." "Yes, you'll have to bear the consequences. It's up to you whether you want them to take the initiative to go up to the ring or for us to make a move." Rudy also followed. Rui Jin, who was still gnawing on the fruit, saw that his two brothers had spoken up, so he didn't want to be outdone. "Brothers, why are you wasting your breath on these old men? If it were up to me, I'd just exterminate them all." Rui Shen's words made Rui Sheng and Rui Zi speechless. They never knew that their little brother, who only knew how to eat, had become so violent. From this, it could be seen that this younger brother of his had already become impatient with these hesitant guys. In fact, they were also running out of patience. However, after their eyes met, they still said kindly, "Brother, we can't be so violent. We have to win them over with virtue." But they didn't give us a chance. Rui Jin's pretty little face was full of grievance. "Then let's be magnanimous and give them one last chance. If they don't grasp it, well, wipe them out again." After thinking for a while, Saint Rui said, "Okay, you'll listen to Big Brother." Rui Jin nodded in agreement, then continued to gnaw on the fruit. The participants from the ancient martial arts families in the VIP seats and below the ring were really angry and depressed when they heard the conversation between the three. In their eyes, these three little kids were simply too arrogant. "And you want to wipe them out all at once? All right." The contestants admitted that these three were very strong, but they didn't even want to let their own ancestor off. Wasn't this a little too much? Not only were the participants unhappy with the arrogance of the three, but the old men in the VIP seats who had been famous for many years and had a good reputation in the ancient martial arts world were also so angry that they were about to explode. These three little bastards were too arrogant. He should be properly tidied up. At this moment, all the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families had the same thought. The most furious among them, the Li family's elder, directly roared, "Three yellow-mouthed kids. They really don't know how high the sky is and how thick the earth is. Didn't the old man of the Yang family tell you to keep a low profile? If you like to show off so much in other places, I'm afraid you'd have been cut off long ago. How can I allow you to be so arrogant?" Hearing this, the three of them blinked innocently. Then, Saint Rui asked, "You mean if we say this in other places, we'll die?" "Of course." The Li clan elder said coldly, killing intent flashing in his eyes. At this moment, he wanted to kill the three of them. The three from the Yang family were so young, but they were already so arrogant. What would they do when they grew up? In addition, the aptitude of these three was also surprisingly good. When they grew up, they would definitely be three disasters. In that case, these three little children could not be kept alive, while they had yet to mature. It could be said that the Li clan's elder thought that he had concealed his thoughts very well, but how could his little thoughts be hidden from the three on the stage and Leng Ruhan? However, Leng Ruhan still did not move. The three of them looked at each other and jumped onto the empty space in front of the VIP seats. The Li family's elder saw the three little children jump from the ring in front of him, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. However, he still asked calmly, "What are you guys doing?" For some reason, Elder Lee suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart, as if something was going to happen. Nothing. "I just want to have a heart-to-heart talk with you," Saint Rue said with a smirk. "Heart-to-heart talk? What the hell are you talking about?" Li Clan's elder was cursing in his heart, but he said, "I don't think we need to have a heart-to-heart talk. Of course, if your Yang family becomes my Li family's subsidiary family, then we can have a heart-to-heart talk. But now, let's forget it. Don't, it's better to talk now, because you might not have the chance to talk to us later." Saint Rue continued with a smile. "Yes, let's talk now. It's still not certain who will become whose subsidiary family." The Yang family's old ancestor also calmly interjected. Originally, he was too lazy to argue with the old man from the Li family. However, if he did not make his stand clear now, he was afraid that the old man from the Li family would be even more lawless. As expected, the moment his words came out, Elder Li's face darkened by more than half, but before he could continue to argue, the already impatient Rui Qiao jumped up high and stretched out her short legs in midair, kicking Elder Li's face. His kick was full of strength. In an instant, Elder Li felt as if his face had been smashed by a 1,000-pound hammer. It was extremely painful, and half of his face instantly swelled up. The Li family's elder cried out in pain, and quickly covered his face with his hands. His fierce and fiery eyes glared angrily at the innocent-looking Rui Qiao, and he roared in anger, "You little bastard, you actually dared to kick me. You're really tired of living." The Li family's old ancestor was truly angry. Without thinking, he reached out to grab Rui Qiao. Unfortunately, Rui Qiao was as slippery as a loach, easily avoiding the Li family's old man's angry claws. As he dodged, Rui Jin, who was nibbling on a fruit, continued to provoke him, I can't. He, come and catch me, you old beast." With a jump, Rui Jin ran out of the range of the VIP seats, and stood in the distance innocently looking at the Li family's old ancestor. After taking a bite of the fruit, he even shouted, "Come and catch me, you old beast. Little bastard. Don't you run." Li family's old ancestor knew that Rui Qiao was trying to goad him into action, but he still couldn't take it and chased after him. This time, Rui Qiao didn't hide anymore, and allowed the other party to grab him. After catching Rui Jing, Li family's old ancestor said with a slight pride, "Little bastard, you can't run away this time, can you?" Rui Jin couldn't help but roll his eyes. He didn't even want to run, okay? In the next moment, Rui Qiao kicked out again, and with a bang, the other half of Li family's elder's face was kicked. Li family's elder was not prepared at all, and he did not expect that Rui Qiao would still have the chance to kick out even though he had her in his hand. After being hit again, he cried out in pain and fell back stiffly. Chapter 3138. Rui Qiao's kick was even stronger than before, so Li family's old ancestor immediately fainted after he fell to the ground. Ancestor! When the Li family members saw this, they were instantly enraged. "Little bastard, you actually dared to injure our Li family's old ancestor." One of the Li family members shouted angrily. "Descendants of old beasts, I didn't hit him. I only kicked him once, no, twice." Rui Jin said with an innocent look. Hearing this, the Li family members were even more furious. Was kicking and hitting different? In the hearts of the Li family members, there was no difference. Of course, in Rui Jin's heart, it was definitely different. Beating was done with hands, kicking was done with feet. How could hands and feet be the same? However, after the Li family's old ancestor fainted, the Li family members did not bother to argue with Rui Qiao. The old ancestor's fall into a trap had directly aroused the anger of the Li family members. So, there was no need to think too much. In an instant, the Li family members who wanted to avenge the old ancestor had surrounded Rui Qiao. Rui Jin faced the Li family's covetous gazes and said very calmly, "Please come up to the arena and beat me up. Otherwise, even if I win, this old man will not admit it." Rui Jin's expression showed that he didn't want to be beaten up for nothing, making everyone in the Li family extremely speechless. At a time like this little kid still had the mood to let them go up the arena? He'll go, who's afraid of who? At this time, the Lee family members did not care about Rui Jie's identity as a little boy. They all jumped onto the stage and put on a posture of wanting to teach Rui Jie a lesson. However, Rui Jin did not move for a long time. Little bastard, you're not afraid, are you? The Lee clansmen saw that Rui Jie was still not on the stage and provoked him. Descendants of old bastards, I'm not afraid. I just have a question to ask. Rui Jin said with a conflicted expression. Seeing this, the Yang family's old ancestor quickly asked, "What's the problem? If I defeat that old bastard's descendants in the arena, does it count as my victory?" Rui Jin asked with a conflicted expression. He was afraid that these people would renege on their debt, and then he would have beaten them up for nothing. What do you guys think? After the Yang family old ancestor heard Rui Ju's words, he turned to ask the others. And when the Lee family members on the stage heard that Rui Jie's question was this, they were instantly so angry that their faces flushed red. What kind of question was this? He clearly didn't trust their credibility. Of course it's the little guy's win. The elder who had a good relationship with the Yang family's ancestor took the lead. Hearing his words, the ancestors of the other clans had no choice but to nod in agreement. Seeing the elders nod their heads, Rui Jie was relieved. Then he jumped onto the stage. "All right, you can gang up on me now," Rui Jin said with a face full of anticipation. Seeing his look of anticipation, the Lee family members felt very conflicted. This little fellow in front of them was definitely someone who would not suffer losses. Didn't he see that when they called him a little bastard, he also returned an old bastard's descendant to them? However, this was obviously not the time to be calculative about how they addressed each other. After all, no one had the advantage in this regard. But when they really wanted to gang up on this little thing, they saw the other party's expression of anticipation of being beaten up by them. Who would feel good about this? Not only did they not feel good, but the Lee family members were also quite depressed. Unfortunately, Rui Xen would not give them the chance to be depressed. Seeing that the other party did not make a move, his figure flashed and he moved. Rui Jin's movements were extremely swift. Other than being afraid that his two older brothers would snatch his people away, he also wanted to end this battle that had already made him a little impatient as soon as possible. With every flash of Rui Qiao's body, a Li family member would fall. The Li family members who had not been affected saw this and attacked Rui Qiao in unison. Rui Ju did not panic, his body turning even faster. At the same time, more Li family members on the stage fell down. At this time, other than the ancestors of the various ancient martial arts families in the VIP seats who could barely see Rui Ju's small figure, the other onlookers could only see a shadow quickly turning around on the stage. After more than 10 minutes, all the Li clansmen had fallen on the stage, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Rui Jin, on the other hand, had an unsatisfied expression as he once again turned his gaze towards the VIP seats. The patriarchs of the various families who felt like they were being stared at by this little fellow all lowered their heads subconsciously, feeling extremely upset. It seemed that the little guy had already seen the benefits of angering them from the incident of angering the old man from the Li family just now. Therefore, they had to calm down and not be fooled like the old man from the Li family. Seeing that they were not looking at him, Rui Jin could only take the initiative to ask, "Did I just win? I'm asking you guys a question." The Yang family's old ancestor saw that no one was answering the little guy, so he helped to ask. The ancestors of the various families hated the Yang family's ancestor to death, but at this time, they obviously couldn't play dumb. "We won." Helplessly, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families could only say in unison. "Then which one is next?" Rui Jin continued to ask. The ancestors of the ancient martial arts families looked at each other, but this time, they didn't say anything. "Who's up? Who dared to go up?" A little boy had beaten so many people from the Li family. Could they still take advantage of him if they sent people up? More importantly, he was just a little boy. If those 3 little children attacked together, the consequences... The elders of each family didn't dare to think too deeply about it. Pretending to be mute again. Rui Jin saw that no one answered him for a long time and became angry again. With a leap, Rui Jie once again jumped to the front of the VIP seats and looked at the various old ancestors with a face of dissatisfaction. The ancestors of the ancient martial arts families were scared by Rui Jie's resentful eyes, but none of them dared to stand out. "If you're not talking, then he'll beat you up together." Rui Jin's pretty little face was serious as he said, "That's a good idea." Saint Ray and Rui Zi agreed. As soon as they finished speaking, the three of them reached out to the ancestors closest to them and grabbed their collars. Seeing this, the three old ancestors suddenly felt a little frightened and said in unison, What are you doing? Fight. We want to fight." Saint Ray said with a smile. Then, with a little force, the ancestor of the ancient martial arts family he was holding was directly lifted out of the VIP seat. Oh my God! Everyone who saw this scene instantly widened their eyes and their hearts were filled with horror. They looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. Was this still a little kid? It actually easily lifted an ancient martial arts expert by the collar. This was clearly a baby-grade invincible iron, gold, and steel. And it wasn't just one, but three. Because after seeing their brother's actions, Rui's and Ruiqiao also followed suit and pulled the old ancestor of an ancient martial arts family in front of them. The three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families who had been humiliated immediately blushed with shame. However, they found that they could not break free from the control of the three babies at all. This fact made them extremely frightened. Who could tell them what was going on? The three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families were roaring in their hearts, but no one could answer them. The three of them did not intend to answer them. They pulled the three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families in front of them. The three of them laughed heartily and then, without saying a word, they punched the three of them together. Suddenly, their eyes swelled up. With a cry of pain, the three old men subconsciously reached out to cover their injured eye, while the other eye, which was intact, glared at the little boy who had hit them with raging flames. The three of them were not afraid. They just looked at each other's purple and swollen eyes thoughtfully. After a long time, Ruzi was a little depressed. "It doesn't seem to be symmetrical." "Yes, it's not very symmetrical." Saint Ray also nodded and said. Rui Jin had the same thoughts in his heart, however, he chose to be a quiet and handsome man, and let his two older brothers do as they pleased. Hearing what Rui Sheng and Rizhi said, the three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families suddenly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, not long after the two brothers finished speaking, the three brothers, who had the same mind, once again punched together. This time, they hit the other eye of the three old men, which was still intact. Accompanied by three screams, the eyes of the three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families were swollen to the point that only a thin line was left. The anger in their hearts was even more surging. They had lived their lives as heroes, and they had never been treated like this. Unfortunately, before the three of them had a chance to get angry, they quickly threw out their fists again, and their fists rained down on the three ancestors of the ancient martial arts families. All of this happened very quickly, and the three powerful people who were considered to be highly respected in the ancient martial arts world did not have a chance to fight back before they were beaten to the point where they spat out blood and fainted. Ancestor. Seeing that their ancestor had also been beaten up, the three families' people were furious and turned to glare at the three. However, no one dared to act rashly. They were afraid that their own families would be beaten up like the Li family. But if they didn't do anything, would the three let them go? That was obviously impossible. Looking at the three old men who could not take a beating, the three felt quite regretful, and turned their eyes to the three families. Were even provoked? Trash, your ancestors were beaten up so badly by us. Don't you want to avenge them? Revenge? Of course they wanted to. However, as soon as they thought about how abnormal these three little fellows were, the three families could not help but hesitate. What to do? The three families couldn't help but exchange glances. They had experienced the strength of the three before and knew that even if the three families joined forces, they would not be a match for these three little bastards. What should they do? Just as the three families were in a dilemma, someone accidentally raised his head and saw several elders in the VIP seats. Immediately, as if he had found his savior, he loudly said, "Seniors, please uphold justice for our three families." With someone taking the lead, the members of the three families naturally followed suit. However, the ancestors of the ancient martial arts families who were still safe in the VIP seats hated the three families' requests to death. Uphold justice? How would he host it? They couldn't even save themselves. Alright. The patriarchs of each family knew very well that if they really did uphold justice for the three families, they would probably be the next to be beaten. Although they didn't know why the three children were so abnormal, they believed that 4 old ancestor-level powerhouses had already been killed by them. Who knew when it would be their turn? At this time, it was the best thing to do to protect himself. Was he going to sacrifice himself after becoming someone else? Were they really that great? Chapter 31-39, Forever Happy, 1. Obviously, none of the ancestors present had the spirit to sacrifice themselves for others. However, when the three of them heard the three families' pleas for help, they looked at the guests in the VIP seats with anticipation. Receiving the three fiery gazes, the elders of the various families sitting there felt a cold wind blow past them, as if they were being stared at by some unknown fierce beast. This feeling made them quite uncomfortable. Among them, many ancestors of ancient martial arts families couldn't help but lower their heads. They didn't dare to look at the three affectionate eyes, for fear that they would be stared at by the three if they were not careful. In fact, it was only a matter of time before they were targeted by the three, but now, after looking at them, they turned their bright eyes to the direction of the three families, and then heard Saint Rouet say, "If you want to take revenge for your ancestors, then get on the arena." What are you waiting for? Get on the arena? The three families looked at each other in dismay, their hearts bitter as if they had eaten a yellow lotus. If they could really teach these three little kids a lesson in the ring, would they still be able to turn to other families for help? However, they also understood now that all the families present were terrified. The three families kept sighing in their hearts. This time, no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Seeing them like this, the three of them were instantly enraged. A bunch of gutless guys, they didn't even dare to challenge three little kids? Truly trash. Feeling the anger of the three, the Yang family's old ancestor was so angry that he cursed these three families in his heart. However, he couldn't do anything if the other party didn't want to enter the ring, right? The Yang family's old ancestor's heart suddenly became extremely worried. At this moment, he suddenly noticed Lung Ruhen walking down the stage from the corner of his eye. This made his heart race. What was he trying to do? It was not just the Yang family's old ancestor who did not understand, even the old men in the VIP seats had no idea what the handsome man in front of them, who was as beautiful as a banished immortal, was trying to do. Just as they were puzzled, Lung Ruhen had already gracefully walked to the three families' seats. Then, the crowd saw him gently raise his hand and the person closest to him was thrown onto the arena. Very quickly, one by one, the people were thrown onto the arena. This scene made everyone speechless. How could this be? Of course, the three of them admired Lung Ruhen's actions very much. "Uncle, you're so awesome," Saint Ray quickly flattered. "Little guys, quickly end the battle. Don't waste your time with them," Lung Ruhen urged. "Uncle, we also want to, but these guys aren't willing to go up the arena." Hearing Lung Ruhen's words, Saint Ray said with a conflicted expression, "Aren't they going up now? After you defeat them, let the other families go up to the ring." Lung Ruhen said calmly. His words made the elders in the honored guests' seats particularly uneasy. What did he mean? Unfortunately, no one could answer their questions. "All right." Hearing Lung Ruhen's words, Saint Ray agreed readily. Then he gave his two younger brothers a look and took the lead to rush to the center of the three families who were still in a daze after being thrown onto the ring by Lung Ruhen. Without giving the other party a chance to react, Rui Xing had already kicked one of them unconscious, and at the same time, his small fist hit the other person. Bang bang bang. With the three of them joining forces, the crowded stage was instantly reduced by more than half. The people who had not been hit by the three were all shocked by their thunderous methods and did not know how to react. After the three of them quickly finished off the people in the ring, their dark and bright eyes naturally turned to the VIP seats, making the hearts of the old men tremble. "All of you, come at me together," Saint Ray suggested as he looked at the VIP seats. In fact, he had already said that. Unfortunately, no one took his words seriously. Now, it was the last chance he gave these people. He just didn't know if they could take it. The ancestors of the ancient martial arts families heard what Saint Ray said and were extremely conflicted. Could they defeat the three of them together? The elders of each family knew that even if the younger generation of their families attacked together, they would not be able to defeat these three children. If they also attacked, the consequences would be even more unpredictable. Of course, the uncertainty in their hearts did not mean that they were confident that they could defeat the three little children if they joined forces, but that they had no confidence at all. They were afraid that they would be beaten up as well if they made a move. Saint Ray didn't know about the conflict in the hearts of the ancestors, and he didn't want to care. However, seeing that these people did not respond to him for a long time, the little fellow became even angrier. However, before Saint Ray could speak, Rueyu threw away the core in his hand and shouted with his eyes wide open, "Are you going to the ring on your own, or do you want my uncle to throw you into the ring?" A threat. It was a blatant threat. Hearing Rui Qiao's words, the faces of the people in the VIP seats darkened. After living for so many years, this was the first time they were threatened by a baby, and they could not take it lightly. They glanced at Leng Ruhan without batting an eyelid. The elders could not help but calculate Leng Ruhan's strength in their hearts. However, after thinking for a long time, they realized that they could not estimate the strength of the immortal-like man. The other party looked no different from an ordinary person, but everyone present had clearly seen his strength. It was just that the other party's strength was too unfathomable, which made them feel a little at a loss. Meanwhile, Leng Ruhan, who had been treated as a lucky charm and threatened, felt a dark cloud hang over her forehead after she felt several probing gazes. What did this brat take his uncle for? Saint Ray was also dissatisfied, because he suddenly realized that his gluttonous brother had learned how to steal his limelight. That was what he wanted to say. "I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it. If you haven't come to a decision, I'll ask uncle to throw you all into the ring." Rui Jin didn't care about what the people present were thinking. Seeing that the other party was playing dumb, he made the final announcement. Hearing this, Leng Ruhan's mouth twitched. This brat really treated her uncle as a coolie. However, Rui Qiao's last words were clearly somewhat effective. After the group of old men in the VIP seats heard his words, they immediately lowered their heads and started to communicate in whispers. About 3 minutes later, an old man stood up first and said, "The Zhao family admits defeat." The old man's admission of defeat made the three of them quite regretful and angry, but they couldn't do anything about it. It was not said that they were not allowed to admit defeat before the fight began. After that, the three of them turned their gazes to the others. The Zhao family's ancestors' admission of defeat made the other family's ancestors look down on him. It should be known that admitting defeat was equivalent to giving himself to the Yang family for 500 years. That was 500 years. Not 50 years, not 5 years, and not even 5 days. As long as they thought about how they would have to work like cows and horses for the Yang family for 500 years if they lost, those ancestors who knew that the three were very strong could not easily admit defeat like the Zhao family's ancestor. Chapter 3140, Forever Happy, 2. The three of them were overjoyed when they saw what they were thinking. However, they did not show it on their faces. Instead, they remained calm and waited for the other party to speak. A moment later, an ancestor of an ancient martial arts family finally asked, "Little guy, don't you regret asking us to come at you together?" "What are you regretting? Didn't I tell you all to come at me together? Why are you so wishy-washy? You really don't look like a man," Saint Ray said unhappily. Hearing this, the elders couldn't help but twitch their lips. This devilish brat, they were only asking, why was he so impatient? Patience? The three were long gone. Ruize's face was filled with impatience. Don't talk nonsense. Quickly come and fight. We still have to go home for lunch after this. Lunch? They didn't eat well either, right? However, they weren't in the mood to have lunch at all. The situation was too disadvantageous for them. Thinking of this, the ancestors couldn't help but look at the Yang family's ancestor, who was sitting as steady as Mount Tai. This old man should be in a good mood now, right? Receiving the other party's gaze, the Yang family's old ancestor bitterly smiled. He didn't need to explain the bitterness in his heart to outsiders. However, the other party obviously did not know what the Yang family was facing. Seeing the Yang family old man clearly about to win, but still acting like he was in deep pain and hatred, they were all instantly enraged. He did it on purpose. This damned old man from the Yang family was definitely doing this on purpose. With this thought in mind, the elders tacitly launched an attack on the Yang family's elder. The Yang family's elder was not careful and suffered a few punches. What are you guys doing? After the Yang family's old ancestor reacted and jumped out of the other party's attack range, he angrily questioned. Yeah, what are you doing? Your opponents are us three brothers. You're not allowed to hit others. Seeing that those old men had ignored the three brothers, Saint Ray was very angry. Well, if you want to fight, you should fight in the arena, or you'll go back on your word again. Ray also added. 5 minutes is up. Hurry up and get on the stage. Stop wasting time. Ruichen followed up and urged. When the elders heard the words of the three little fellows, they also revealed a bitter smile. Look at their children, they are so protective of their elders. Looking at his own, it was really infuriating to compare. The elders sighed and stared at the Yang family's elder with envy and jealousy. Then, they left the VIP seats and jumped onto the ring. Since they were going to fight, he would let them experience the strength of the three little children. All of you come up. On the stage, the elders of each family called out to their juniors. Seeing that their own ancestors had gone up to the ring, the members of the various families also knew that they could not avoid it, so they could only brace themselves and go up to the ring. Seeing that the arena was instantly filled with people again, the three of them were in a good mood. It would have been better if you had taken the initiative earlier. It would have saved us a lot of time. Although Saint Ray was satisfied, he could not help but want to complain. Little boy, don't say those useless things. You were the one who asked us to attack together. Don't cry when you're in pain. Hearing Saint Rui's smugness, someone deliberately said, Don't worry, we won't cry. I'm afraid you'll be the ones crying. Saint Ray was neither angry nor annoyed, and replied with a smile. In that case, let's begin. An old man said. Yes, hurry up and make your move. The three mutants said in unison. They had long been impatient. As soon as he finished speaking, the family members on the ring collectively attacked the three. At this time, they didn't care that they would be laughed at if they ganged up on the three babies. For the reputation and interests of their families, even if these three were very monstrous, they had to fight. With this thought in mind, the members of each family were quite ruthless. They didn't even treat the three babies as their enemies. In their eyes, the three babies in front of them were their biggest opponents. Furthermore, this would affect the rise and fall of their clans for the next 500 years. As such, none of the clans dared to take this lightly. Seeing that their opponent was finally taking them seriously, the three of them were very excited and their mood was even better. After the real battle began, the three immediately entered into a state of mind. However, the three of them were very relaxed and deliberately teased their opponents. Therefore, at the beginning, the three of them could be said to be fleeing in all directions. Seeing that the three little children only cared about dodging and not fighting back, the old man who had a good relationship with the Yang family's ancestor couldn't help but worry for the three cute little guys. I say, those old things are already on the stage, aren't you going to help? Those three little fellows don't have the strength to fight back now. The old man reminded. No need to help. The three little things will take care of it. The Yang family's old ancestor said, very assured. I've never seen anyone act like an ancestor like you. Are you really not worried at all? What if the three little fellows lose the match? The old man wanted to continue to persuade them, but he only spoke half of his words before he shut his mouth. He tried his best to open his eyes wide and look at the sudden change in the ring in disbelief. In almost the blink of an eye, a third of the people on the ring had been kicked off, but the three little guys were still alive and kicking in the ring. Although the old man knew that the little guy was very strong and had the ability to fight against more people with fewer people, the number of people in the ring now was obviously different from before. Even at the beginning, the three little guys seemed to be a little outmatched. How could the situation have a trend of reversal after he spoke a few words with his old friend? Wasn't this change a little too fast? The old man didn't dare to believe it, but the reality in the ring forced him to believe it. Then, seeing his old friend's calm and composed look, he could only put his heart at ease and patiently observe the changes in the arena. In the next 10 minutes, the number of people in the ring was reduced by nearly half. The range of activity of the three in the ring had also expanded a lot. Not long after, the juniors of the various families were all knocked off the stage, leaving the three opponents with only the ancestors of the various families. "I hope you guys can take a beating," Saint Ray said with a smirk. After he finished speaking, he took the lead and attacked the old man closest to him. Seeing this, the old man who was attacked by him quickly tried to block it, but he was still punched in the chest by Saint Ray. Suddenly, he felt as if his chest was 1,000 pounds heavy. After a muffled groan, he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, Saint Ray added another kick and kicked the old man off the ring. Rui Zi and Rui Qiao followed suit and quickly kicked an old man down. The old men who were kicked off the stage all spat out blood and were quickly carried away by the Yang family members. As the number of people in the ring decreased, the three's attacks slowed down a lot. It was obvious that they hadn't tortured their opponents enough, but their actions gave their opponents a headache. At this moment, the few elders who were still holding on in the ring had a rather deep understanding of the three little monsters' strength after testing their strength. So at this moment, they all wished that the other party would just kick them out of the ring and not torture them anymore. Unfortunately, while their thoughts were beautiful, reality was cruel. Because the three of them were dissatisfied with the previous delays of the various families, they deliberately left a few unlucky people for them to tease, so their wishes were likely to be temporarily unachievable. After an unknown amount of time, when the few old men left on the stage were covered in minor injuries and their clothes were in tatters, the three finally had enough fun and kicked them off the stage. The moment they fell off the arena, the elders felt relieved. They felt a sense of relief, and this feeling made them want to cry. Before the old men with wet eyes and scars were carried away, they heard the three men on the ring ask in unison, "We won, right? We won." The few elders replied weakly, and then they were so angry that their eyes rolled back and they fainted. Looking at the few people who had fainted, the three of them blinked their eyes and calmly walked down the ring, leaving without looking back. Watching the three of them leave, the old man beside the Yang family's old ancestor couldn't help but excitedly poke his arm and said, "Congratulations, you have so many affiliated families all of a sudden." The old man was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Unfortunately, he did not have such a perverted little boy in his family. What he didn't know was that the Yang family's ancestor didn't feel happy at all. At this time, the Yang family's ancestor was thinking, "We're finished. The Yang family will be next." That's right, the competition was already over. Although the three representatives of the Yang family had won the bet, the Yang family's old ancestor couldn't be happy. He would never forget the crime committed by his disappointing junior. The current Yang family could be destroyed at any time. At the thought of this, he quickly stood up from the VIP seats and headed straight to the courtyard where Leng Ruoxue and the others were. However, the Yang family's old ancestor had been refused entry. Ji Kai stopped the Yang family ancestor outside the courtyard and said that his master didn't want to see him. The Yang family's old ancestor felt extremely bitter when he heard this. However, he did not dare to offend Leng Ruoxue and the rest. Hence, he could only leave resentfully. Not long after returning to the main courtyard, the representatives of the ancient martial arts families went to the Yang family's ancestor one after another to express that they would fulfill the bet. Hearing this, the Yang family's ancestor could only nod woodenly. At this time, this was not what he wanted to hear the most. Looking at the Yang family's ancestor, who obviously won but still had a bitter face, the representatives of the major ancient martial arts families felt a little uncomfortable in their hearts. However, now that they had become affiliated families of the Yang family, they naturally did not dare to show their dissatisfaction in front of the Yang family's ancestor. The Yang family's ancestor did not have the mood to deal with them, so after hastily sending them away, he began to frown again. Not only was the Yang family's ancestor frowning, but the Yang family, who knew the truth, also couldn't be happy about the fact that they had won but had no life to enjoy. At the same time, Leng Ruoxue and the rest were preparing to leave. However, they didn't tell anyone about their departure. They left quietly. When the Yang family realized that Leng Ruoxue and the rest had left, they were still at a loss. This was because they found a note with only 4 words on it: "Take care." The Yang family members were a little scared. They understood that they had to take care of themselves, but what did these 4 words mean? Do you still want their lives? In the face of this unclear truth, the Yang family could not be at ease. Helplessly, the old ancestor of the Yang family could only send Yang Shan to meet Leng Ruoxue and the others. At least in the heart of the old ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Shan had some say in Leng Ruoxue and the others. Yang Shan, who felt that he had a heavy burden on his shoulders, rushed to the residence of Leng Ruoxue and the others without stopping. When they arrived at their destination, Yang Shan felt a little uneasy. Fortunately, Leng Ruoxue and the rest did not turn him away. Unfortunately, he did not know how to bring it up when he saw Leng Ruoxue. Faced with Leng Ruoxue's clear eyes, Yang Shan did not have the courage to ask about the Yang family's fate. Instead, he thickened his skin and stayed. At the same time, he also understood one thing. To Leng Ruoxue and the rest, the Yang family was like an ant that they did not need to fear. He didn't seem to care about the Yang family at all. The days went on as usual. The 3 of them were still as adorable as ever. The demon still loved to be jealous of her son. Leng Ruoxue was still stuck between her dear husband and her adorable son. However, she felt that this kind of life was very blissful. Family, lover, son, she already had everything. What more could she ask for? A few years later, when Leng Ruoxue and the rest returned to the God world, the 3 of them had already grown up and started their own legend. Chapter 3141, Song's Confession. It was called Azure, a guardian tower spirit born from chaos. It didn't know how many years it had lived. It only knew how to watch the ants in its eyes come and go every day, live and die, never stopping. Such days were rather boring. However, it could not resist, because this was its mission. He would protect the divine realm and the peace of the various planes. Originally, it should have had a partner. However, that partner was too stupid. He had raised an ungrateful wolf and even killed himself. From then on, he only had himself again. However, it didn't care because it didn't like that partner in the first place. When his partner was too stupid and played him to death, it also knew, but it was cold-blooded and didn't save him. Of course, it couldn't be said that it didn't save him. When it discovered all this, that guy was about to collapse. So, there was naturally no need to waste its strength to save an idiot. But from then on, it was alone again. The days of living alone were lonely. It was so bored that it even thought of finding a master for itself. It had been lonely for too long, and it really yearned for the warmth of home. It was a pity that it never knew what home was. Ever since the news of the God-protecting pagoda recognizing a master spread, many people came to the God-protecting pagoda every day, but those people were no doubt idiots in its eyes. They couldn't even answer the simplest question it had given, so how could its master be such a stupid fellow like a pig? It threw those stupid pigs out one by one. It didn't know how long it had been like this. Although it was still so bored, it didn't stop looking for its master. It was actually quite sick of seeing those people being stupid every day. However, it quickly found a new source of entertainment. That was, whenever he was bored, he would go to the Divine Master's estate and cause trouble for that woman. That woman was very afraid of it. Although she was always angered to death by it, she never dared to fall out with it. In the beginning, it felt a sense of accomplishment, but gradually, it got tired of such days. Until one day, it met a woman by the name of Lung Ruoshua. That woman was extremely beautiful. In the eyes of the artifact spirit, she was definitely a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. He was quite satisfied with her and felt that she was very smart. It would be good for her to be his master. However, it also had its own troubles. Because there were too many beasts around that woman, and they had to fight for her favor every day. However, this was also good. At least his days would not be boring. Song's favorite thing to do was to transform into all kinds of cute little beasts and lie in Lung Ruosh's arms. It felt great. Of course, it had used its Totoro image the most because it realized that Lung Ruoshua seemed to like its Totoro appearance. Later on, it was even a kitten. Thinking back to the tragic experience of transforming into a kitten, Song couldn't bear to recall it. That was something that happened after they had eliminated Wu Yen and Lung Ruoshua had become a divine master. Come to think of it, it was a good thing that his girl had become a divine master. Furthermore, she would have the help of the guardian tower spirit, which was even better. The only thing that made it feel bad was that Nyo actually proposed to that stinky man after becoming a divine master. So be it if it was a proposal, but that stinky man had actually taken his girl away, causing him to look all over the universe for her. After that, he finally found Nyo, only to find out that Nyo had a baby in her stomach. This was its child, and it was looking forward to it. Furthermore, in order to earn money for the baby's milk powder, it had done a lot of things. However, that stinky man did not appreciate it and even wanted to snatch the child away from it. This matter, Uncle can tolerate it, but Aunt can't. How could she not win over that stinky man? As it turned out, it had indeed snatched the children. However, it later found out that the stinky man despised the 3 cute children for stealing the attention of his girl. He was feeling unhappy, but now, with him as the godfather snatching the children, that damn demon just took advantage of the situation. Of course, it didn't care about being used. After all, the 3 babies were really cute, and they were the girl's children. As a godfather, it naturally had to love the house and the house. The 3 milk babies had a very good relationship with it. It was just about to surpass the position of that damned evildoer in the hearts of the 3 cute children, but at this time, that damned evildoer had tripped it up. I wonder where he got this little female cat from. From the day it saw the little female cat, it had been pestered by her. The little female cat even wanted to marry it and have a bunch of kittens with it. Oh my! Every time it thought of this, it felt terrified. It wasn't a real cat, so how could it have a baby with a female cat? Moreover, even if it was a cat, it couldn't possibly take a fancy to an ordinary cat with a limited lifespan of only 10 years at most. It wasn't that it looked down on ordinary cats, but the 2 cats didn't match up in status and didn't even have a common language. Fortunately, this matter quickly disappeared. Otherwise, it could only escape back to the divine realm. Ever since this incident, it had been particularly vigilant of all the cats around its house, as if it were guarding against thieves. Later on, under its strict defense, such a thing finally did not happen again. As for it, it accompanied the 3 little babies to travel around the world all day long, and its little days were particularly fulfilling. After that, when they returned to the divine world, they were still together every day. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.